remote and hybrid privileges. We'll open today's show by checking in with you about the state of your work life and if you think coming together in the office can do anything for the emotional isolation so many people are dealing with right now, or if a return to the office would be a big-time deal breaker.
I'm Marjorie Egan. After that, we're tracking Donald Trump and Elon Musk's long and bleak anti-trans agenda with a focus on resistance for trans people just trying to lead normal lives. We'll talk with lawyer and LGBT rights activist Harvard's Alejandra Caraballo. That and more ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. A federal judge says the Trump administration has disobeyed their court order to release federal funds frozen last week by President Trump. Democratic attorneys general had sued to restore payments for grants and other federal programs. NPR's Elena Moore reports.
The order directs the Trump administration to immediately end any federal funding pause, pointing to information from states that details how some funding has remained inaccessible. The legal challenge is one of two lawsuits sparked by a memo from the Office of Management and Budget last month. That memo was rescinded days after it was released, but the White House says a review of federal funding is still necessary. The administration also argued in a court filing that it had acted, quote, in good faith to interpret the scope of the court's temporary restraining order. Elena Moore, NPR News.
The judge ordered all federal funding be restored until he can hold another hearing. The Trump administration is appealing the decision. President Trump has imposed 25% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imported into the U.S. This will affect all U.S. allies, including the European Union. The European Commission's chief for trade and economic security, Marfos Šefčovič, says tariffs won't work the way President Trump says they will.
Tariffs are taxes, bad for businesses, worse for consumers. And by imposing tariffs, the U.S. will be taxing its own citizens, raising costs for its own business, and fueling inflation.
Trump says these will safeguard U.S. companies that make these metals, but some economists warn U.S. companies that need steel and aluminum will have to pay higher prices to get them. Automakers, home builders, and defense contractors could choose to lay off workers to save money. The Justice Department is advising federal prosecutors to drop corruption charges against New York Democratic Mayor Eric Adams. NPR's Ryan Lucas reports.
Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove sent a memo to the acting U.S. Attorney in Manhattan, Danielle Sassoon, instructing her to dismiss the charges against Mayor Adams as soon as practicable, subject to a few conditions. Those include that the matter be reviewed after New York City's mayoral election this fall. The memo says the directive is not based on an assessment of the strength of the case. Instead, it says the indictment last year came too close in time to the mayoral election this upcoming November. It also says the prosecution hinders Adams' ability to help in Trump's immigration crackdown. The move comes after Adams visited Trump in Florida and attended his inauguration. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
Meanwhile, Trump has pardoned former Illinois Democratic Governor Rod Blagojevich for corruption crimes. He had been convicted of pressuring people and groups for money. He had tried to sell former President Barack Obama's U.S. Senate seat. Trump says the sentence was an injustice. This is NPR.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. The state's highest court has denied a defense request to dismiss 2 charges against Karen Reed, clearing the way for her second trial to proceed. Reed is accused of backing her SUV into her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, and leaving him to die in the snow in Canton 3 years ago. The judge declared a mistrial in the case in July. The defense had argued that several jurors told them they agreed that Reed was not guilty of second-degree murder and leaving the scene of a crash resulting in death. So the defense said trying her on those charges again amounts to double jeopardy. The state Supreme Judicial Court said in its ruling that post-trial accounts of jurors' public deliberations do not constitute an acquittal, noting that the jurors stated during private deliberations that they could not reach a unanimous verdict on any of the charges. Reed's second trial is scheduled for April. The State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education discussed new high school graduation requirements last night. For 2 decades, students had to pass the MCAS exam in 10th grade to get their diplomas. But a majority of voters supported a ballot measure that eliminates the requirement. Rob Curtin is the Education Department's Chief Officer for Data Assessment and Accountability. He says one option is for students to pass minimum course requirements that meet 10th grade standards.
You can imagine a scenario where the council comes up with some minimum course requirements. And if those are aligned, our districts would be that much more prepared to hit the ground running.
A new graduation requirement will be presented for an education department vote in the spring. A chilly Tuesday ahead of possible snow Wednesday night. Mostly cloudy tonight, lows in the teens, clouding up Wednesday, highs in the 30s. Snow possible Wednesday night, lows in the 20s, 27 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Skoll Foundation, dedicated to powering social innovators to transform the world. Learn more at skoll.org. And the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation at rwjf.org.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming, thank you, at youtube.com/GBH News. Going to be back here tomorrow, joined by the Mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, for another edition of Ask the Mayor. She'll take our questions and yours between 11 and noon. Hi, Jim.
Hey, I just want to make clear about Mayor Wu. A number of you have texted in and said, is she going to be here? She's Zooming in. Mayor Wu will physically be with us here at the library from 11 to 12. And speaking of physically here at the library, before we start, there's students from the Community Academy in Jamaica Plain here to watch some of the show. A shout out to you guys. Thank you for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
So we're starting the show with an attempt to avoid the latest out of Trump's administration, sort of. We'll have plenty of politics later in the show, so stay tuned. The American Civil Liberties Union, Carol Rose, civil rights attorney Alejandra Caraballo, and John King from CNN are all ahead. But right now, the lines are open at 877-301-8970 to call or text to ask you about the push for workers to return to the office. 5 years after COVID, are you sick of the Zoom meetings, or would a return to work directive be a deal breaker for you? Also, what happens when your company does mandate your return, but they've scaled down their physical space since 2020? You lost your personal workspace, maybe your parking spot, which is exactly what's happening with Donald Trump's mandate that federal employees come back. Or are you engaging in coffee badge? You know what that is? You just show up, you sign in, you got a coffee, maybe trade a little gossip and head back home. Or do you miss the companionship of your coworkers, assuming you remember who they are? The number is 877-301-8097. Here's a poll from Gallup in November of remote-capable workers, meaning they could work remotely and get their job done. 19% of those remote-capable people are on site, 26% are all remote, and 55% are hybrid. So we'd like to know your situation. And if you are hybrid or remote, and your boss said you got to start showing up X numbers of days a week in excess of what you're already doing, would that be enough for you to decide I'm just not going to work here anymore? 877-301-8970. You try to work at home one day a week, and you love it.
I love it. I do.
Why is that?
Because you don't have to, I don't have far to drive.
You don't have to see me.
Just kind of more relaxed. You can have your coffee and just mosey on over to your little den and do the show from there. Yeah, it's fun. But, it's probably not as good as being there in person. Just like Zoom is not as good as being there in person. So it's not ideal, but I kind of do like it.
Don't you feel you do a better job when, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but let me put you on the spot. Don't you feel a better job when you're surrounded by your coworkers and there's I'm serious, there's like a percolating up of ideas, some of which you glom on. I mean, don't you feel that way?
Well, I'm talking about those percolation of ideas.
Yeah, but we're talking behind your back a lot while you're at home. So that is something you're not privy to.
I mean, I think from my friends and family and my kids and their 20-something and 30-something cohorts, they love the hybrid deal. I mean, nobody seems to want to go in 5 days a week. Amazon is making people come in 5 days a week. You just had the federal government employees in D.C. having to come in 5 days a week. So a lot of places are starting it.
Locally, by the way, Wayfair and the State Street Corporation, 4 days a week in the office for corporate employees, 3 days a week for their tech employees. By the way, Akamai, which I think is in Cambridge. I think it's in Kendall Square. Am I right about that? I think so. You know what the work situation is? The individual worker decides how much he or she or they feel most productive, and that's what they do. They could be hybrid, they could be remote in entirety, or show up at work every day.
Where do you feel most productive?
I come to work every day.
Yeah.
And by the way, you think I'm doing it like a virtuous signaling kind of thing. I am so unproductive at home alone. I just can't, I'm just not
So I feel
productive.
the opposite. I feel I'm much more productive when I'm
By the way,
I'm
when
home.
you are at home, I shouldn't say this, the staff says you're totally unproductive. That is what the talk is on our little
The
team.
other thing, I'm always worried about getting things out of the printer. You know, it's always a question. Will the printer work today? Will the printer not work today? It's the only thing that's upsetting about it. But, you know, one of the things that we've talked a lot about in Boston is all this downtown real estate. 1 in 4 office spaces is still empty, and that's caused the value of a lot of that real estate to go down. That's that big fight Michelle Wu was having between having those businesses pick up some of the real estate taxes so that homeowners wouldn't get such a big hit. But that's one thing. I mean, you do feel really bad for the people. And there are more people down there now, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You know, the delis, the dry cleaners, all those little local places that depended on people being in downtown. So that's kind of a good thing that they're back. But
isn't it clear that hybrid is what work
I think
should
so.
be like? I mean, I choose to come in. I don't have to. There's only a mandate that you be at work at GBH 2 days a week. I think it's Tuesday and Wednesday. For climate reasons, it's obviously better. For childcare reasons, which is still totally unaffordable, it's obviously better. So I think we sort of happened into it, but I think that's going to be the primary way people work in the
In this
future.
John Chesto story in the Globe, he talks again about Tuesdays through Thursdays are the big days. Financial services, though, law offices, real estate workers are more likely to be in the office more, and tech workers, no surprise, are most likely to be not in the office more. And places like big companies like Liberty Mutual, 2 days a week, Mass Mutual, John Hancock, 3 days, Blue Cross, Blue Shield of Massachusetts is also, I think, it's not. It's 2 days, I think. I may be wrong about.
Can we take some calls?
Yes, we'll take some calls.
877-301-8970. I guess we do this every 6 months, but it was prompted by the fact that a lot of major corporations, the Amazons, the federal government itself, are requiring people to come back to work 5 days a week. Want to know what your reaction to that is and what your work situation is. Eric in Worcester, you're first on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for the call.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
So, I mean, I think the question I have on all of this is really the why. Why do this? You know, if the option is productivity, we can measure that anyways. We've been measuring it over the course of COVID. People needed to stay productive, getting their work done. We can measure that. So just bringing people back in under this guise of increased productivity is complete baloney.
Well, I'm not sure, if I may interrupt you, I don't think Trump is, I haven't heard him say even increased productivity, nor Bezos. I think that's sort of like, I'm in charge and I'm telling you to come back to work. And if you don't like it, you should go find a job elsewhere. I mean, do you?
And I think that's part of their goal, is force people to quit.
Oh,
yeah.
You mentioned on the radio previously, the patent office had been doing this prior to COVID and had higher rates of reviewing documents because software patents and things like that require expertise knowledge. And now we know it works, and now they're saying, let's shift it back. It's total BS.
What's your work situation, Eric?
So I'm hybrid, and I will say even that has its challenges. You mentioned before that when we make these shifts all of a sudden, it's really hard for people with families. For me, I'm signing my kids up for daycare for the fall now. So if I get told in the summer I need to be in 5 days a week, I've got a big problem if all of a sudden I'm not here to get my kids off the bus or to pick them up at the right time. But I do say I like the hybrid approach myself. I'm like you. I like being in the office some. But there's really, I think that depends on the employee themselves. I think when we talk about quality of life, it looks down. It increases turnover. It's especially hard for families and kids. And really that this is going to increase our need for space, which I have zero sympathy for the commercial, real estate market, frankly, turn it into housing. And at the same time, it's going to increase traffic and congestion. There's really no huge benefit to this. If productivity is the issue, then measure that.
Eric, that was an incredibly thoughtful call. Thank you for your thoughts, and good luck with the hybrid work life. 301-897. I think he covered practically every base there.
Here's some text. Return to office full-time is a deal breaker for me, probably for almost everyone I work with. My workplace would lose a lot of talent. A lot of people are saying that. I think particularly for young people who have come into the workforce this way, getting them to work 5 days a week, I think that will just go someplace else. Another one, this is Lori. I feel as though hybrid's a way to go. I got to know my colleagues 100% virtually. We developed a rapport. As a manager, I feel as if those early in their career benefit from being in the office and in person, but I strongly feel like 5 days a week is not necessary. And as she points out, there are so many unscheduled interruptions. When you're at the office, you get more done from home.
Yeah, but I hear that, and I agree with that. But at the same time, the osmosis effect in the office, particularly in a newsroom kind of thing.
You have a refrigerator problem, Jim.
I do have a refrigerator. Well, do you want to explain what that is, since most people don't know what that means?
I think it's difficult for you to stay away from the refrigerator when you're working at home, so you eat more when you're trying to diet.
My desk is right next to the refrigerator, is what Marjorie's trying to say.
Yeah.
Jane in Concord, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about people's work situation, hybrid, all remote, or all in the office kind of thing in February of 2025. Hi.
Hi, I actually know someone who's an executive at a company, and they closed all their offices so that everyone will just continue to work from home, and they're very happy with that. I wanted to remind that there was a lot of complaints about traffic before, and if people are forced to commute into the cities, then that just boosts the traffic, which is horrible for the environment. And also it puts a lot more pressure on housing that's closer to where people work. The current non-commuting means people can live further away, and a lot of people have made commitments to housing that's further away.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a good idea to require people to be in the office every day.
It's another good call. Jane, thank you for the call. Did you see this anonymous text?
Yeah, I have been asked to return to the office, but my colleagues who chose to live more than 50 miles away from the office can continue to be remote. Double standard.
That's outrageous.
Meanwhile, my employer took away my personal workspaces, so I have to pack a bag for office creature comforts like my coffee cup blanket because the office is freezing. All for a job I was doing perfectly well remotely. My boss is remote as well. I'm not going to comply unless I get caught.
It's an honest person. By the way, we didn't put on the list. Wasn't Elon Musk at Twitter, one of the first people, his staff people back at work full time?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think he.
And by the way, when was the last time he was at work? I'm serious.
Yeah,
months.
He's in this fight over with AI with this guy Sam Altman.
Yeah.
Who's a big AI guy too, and it was a very interesting interview with them because I guess they used to be friendly, like. Elon Musk and Kara Swisher used to be friendly. She does a great podcast. She writes for Vox and the New York Times and stuff. And Altman was talking about the grand insecurity from which Elon Musk suffers, which is, I think, because of Trump's father, similar to Donald Trump, although he hides it well. I thought that was just an interesting insight into Musk.
I buy it.
Constant need to get attention, this constant need to throw, shade at people to get the headlights focused on him.
We have to take a break.
Oh, we have to take a break.
Yeah,
That's
there's
right.
a clock. See that clock there?
I know. I always forget.
We've only been doing this 25 years.
Well, it's pledge.
When the clock hits
I
zero,
forget. I get all worked up, and then I realize it's pledge. So we are going to take a quick pledge break. We're going to be right back talking about your work from home situation or not working from home situation. What do you think? 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
Okay, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. That's the number or the website to reach us at. If you are inclined to donate to this operation here, we're 15 hours a week, but the whole station is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's very expensive to put this operation together. We do not do commercials like commercial television or commercial radio, so therefore we depend on the people that are listening to us now to support this place. As I said a million times, more than 70% of our budget comes from on small donations, $5, $10, $15 a month from people who listen to us. And the Pledge Group put together a list of some of the people that we've had on the show in recent days, and it's a lot of people. Members of Congress, Ed Markey, who was kind enough to talk to us. We often have on our local representatives, Anna Presley. We've had Elizabeth Warren on. Of course, we have the mayor with us all the time, the governor with us once a month. Kelly Beatty from Sky and Telescope, he was talking about this asteroid that may come close to Earth. Former lottery presenter Dawn Hayes. Remember? I was so surprised to see the pictures of her when I saw her on TV. I recognized her right away. She was great to talk to. And then we have live music Fridays every single week. So Mayor, the governor, the attorney general, et cetera. It's an impressive lineup, Jim.
Okay, it's not only an impressive lineup. Thank you for listening, everybody we've had on lately. There's also, I don't know if people picked up on it yesterday, while Marjorie was really enamored of the belt bag. It wasn't my favorite enticement, as Marjorie called it. Today's thing is fabulous. You ever done Babbel?
The fanny pack. That's what we call it.
Whatever the hell it's called. Today is this Babbel thing. If you sign up for $10 a month, $120 all at once, you get a 12-month subscription to Babbel, which, and I've had friends, I haven't done it, friends who have done it said the best foreign language learning thing there is. And this is a fabulous deal. And again, $10 a month, $120 all at once. And all you have to do is call 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. You can use it on any device. Pick up wherever you left off on one device, on another device. It's really a great deal. But let me do my mandatory. That shouldn't be why you give money. That's sort of an added thank you kind of deal. If you choose to give money, it's because you value what our colleagues do here at the station. We really value it. They do fabulous work on air, behind the scenes. If you agree with us, drop whatever you can on GBH at 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. And while you don't have to, if you want to leave a little comment for us or our colleagues about why you gave, we love that too. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us in person tomorrow, 11 to 12, for Ask the Mayor, answering our questions and yours. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the fact that a growing number of companies and governments, like the federal government, are telling people they have to return to work full time. It appears that in remote capable workplaces, hybrid is still the majority kind of situation. We want to know what you prefer, what your situation is, and if you were told you had to return to work full time, would you be looking for another job? 877-301-8970.
If Donald Trump is forcing the federal workforce to work at the office, he should not be allowed to work from Mar-a-Lago. That's from Eli.
That's a good one. I like that.
In Beverly. And then Kathy Rhode Island says, I'm in favor of people being back in the workplace. I really believe in the water cooler effect, a synergy you just can't get over Zoom. As a child care, that's a different issue. And someone was complaining about how it isn't about babysitting kids. I don't think it's about babysitting kids as much as the commute that you may have from work to the child care place or from your house to the child care place. It takes you a lot longer to get your day together when you have these long drives to places as opposed to maybe having someplace close to home.
877-301-8970. Keenan in Salem, hey.
Hello, hello.
Hello to you.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
Wow, we love that.
Yeah, and I just had a quick input here to just maybe possibly redirect the conversation a little bit.
Sure.
I've worked both from home as well as right now I am full-time in the office. And I do see arguments really on both sides of this that are fairly legitimate. The water cooler effect, as you just mentioned, I think is a pretty real phenomenon that we've all experienced in one way or another. However, I think that all of this feels just a little bit superfluous given the fact that there is no legitimate given reason for this other than just the authoritarian bully tactic to get as many federal workers to quit as they possibly can.
Oh, you're talking about Trump's? Yeah, I agree with that.
Yes. Well, and having established a pretty rigid partisan line on working from home and hybrid work in general, they've politicized the hell out of that over the last 2 or 3 years. It's a safe bet on their part that people who are quitting for these reasons are relatively left-leaning. So it's going to further polarize the existing federal workforce But a buddy of mine gave me an analogy this morning that I wanted to share that kind of put this into a new perspective for me. And it's, if I'm waking up in the morning to go to work and I, come down the stairs and my car in the driveway is actively being painted by somebody. There's just somebody in my driveway painting my car. My initial reaction is not going to sit there and debate which color I prefer. It's going to be to say, hey, what the hell are you doing? The car may look better in a new color. That may be true. The car may look better in the color it is right now. That may be true.
So, Keenan, I missed that. And
totally
what point, what is the car painting image? What does that prove?
It's the act of Trump to force everybody back into the office. The question right now should not be whether or not going back into the office is good or bad. It shouldn't be a pro or con for office work. It should be, why are they doing this, and is this okay?
Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a very good analysis.
Keenan, thank you.
I agree with that. Keenan, thanks for your first call. Call again soon. 877-301-8970.
Here's a texter. Should we be surprised that the wealthiest male corporations, the ones requiring this, like the first caller said, hard for families, working moms in particular, since they have figured out how to work and work well with hybrid. And this is Elias in Boston. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. COVID has damaged people's cognitive ability and memory. People don't seem to remember anything from remote work done prior to the pandemic to the fact that Nazis are bad. The unsaid part of the return to office pushes the corporate groupthink that disregards logic and reason in favor of appearances and pleasing certain individuals.
John Edwards, who we don't talk about much anymore for good reason, came up with the line, there are two Americas.
Yeah.
This exacerbates the two Americas thing, though, too, because I gave you the statistics from that November Gallup poll for remote capable people. There are a lot of people who can't work remotely. And don't you think there's some resentment about, and there should be, in my estimation, that some workers, depending upon what they do, can stay at home, can lounge around in their pajamas or their underwear doing their work, and I got to come to work 5 days a week.
Well, we get that all the time. Teachers have to go to work every single solitary day. Obviously, police officers,
service workers,
grocery public safety workers, and hospital workers, all those people that used to be big heroes during COVID, but
that lasted about a minute.
Not so much anymore. Let's go to Annie in Gardner. Hi, Annie.
Hello, Annie.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm calling to fly the introvert flag.
Fly it away, Annie.
So, Jim, I think you especially are an extrovert. I'm an introvert, and remote work has been something of a savior for me emotionally. I don't have to do hallway chit-chat or giant conference rooms full of people. I can just do my work, and I know I'm really lucky, and I feel very grateful. But there's a whole population out there called introverts, and a lot of us are very grateful for this time and being able to be remote.
I love your call because it's an angle I hadn't heard before. But if you want to break out of your introversion, I don't know if that's a word, but let's assume it is for a minute, isn't the best place to do it an occasional toe in your workplace where you know people, you're probably comfortable with at least some subgroup of those people? I mean, isn't that the perfect place to...
No, introverts typically break out, as you put it, from their introversion, like one-on-one with one good friend or a few good friends.
Yeah.
But a bunch of strangers in a room or people I barely know stopping me in a hallway or by the coffee machine, that's just the worst. That's the worst.
So, Annie, as an introvert, hey, Annie, this is a great call. As an introvert, how hard was it for you to call the show?
Well, ironically, I'm one of those introverts where I can gather my focus and energy, and I can do things like this. I speak in public every now and then. Like a lot of performers are introverts.
I know that.
And they have to really gather their strength to do anything that's not, one-on-one.
Annie, just you and I are on opposite sides of this, but our colleague Zoe just wrote us a note. This woman is singing my song. On a particularly busy day in the office, I warned my partner, I will be non-verbal in the evening. Do not talk to me. So you have a compatriot.
I believe it.
Annie, that was a great call.
Yeah.
Thank you for making it. We appreciate it.
Here's one last one before we go to the break. I work for a large healthcare company close to administrative offices, so we work totally remotely. My productivity has never been higher. No one interrupts my flow of work. I can stop and throw in a load of laundry. Don't miss any of my kids' games. I log back in later if necessary to make up any missed time or missed work. Do not lose any time commuting, packing lunch, etc. This is fantastic. I couldn't go back. So there you go.
There you go.
What would you say, 50-50?
What would I say? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so at all. I think if the average person had to choose, and by the way, I would choose this too, even though I don't use it very much. Hybrid work we never would have experimented with it had not been for COVID. And I think because of the experience in COVID, including employers learning that it works, I think that's the way of the future.
Okay, after a quick break, LGBTQ civil rights attorney Alejandra Caraballo joins us here at the library to talk about how the Trump administration's aggressive rollback of trans rights in this country, essentially saying the government knows better how to care for trans adults and trans children than those individuals, mothers and fathers and physicians. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support, so please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
Okay, some of you who've been kind enough to donate this morning have left us some notes. This is a good one. Carolyn from Bedford, New Hampshire, longtime listener, first-time donor. That's pretty good. Mimi in Oxford, I listen to Jim and Marjorie 3 times a week. I love Marjorie more than Jim. That's everybody. It's no surprise. Brian in Southborough, I love listening in the morning. My favorite is Jim and Marjorie. Jessica in Ipswich, love GBH. What you do is so important. Love listening to Jim and Marjorie. I can't tell you, when you write notes like this, either to us or our colleagues here, it means a huge, huge amount, as does your generosity. And I'm told you've been very generous during this pledge drive, and we'd like you to keep it up for a couple of days. If you haven't given yet, here's your opportunity, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org, and the, what do you call it? Enticement.
Enticement.
Yeah, on the morning show this morning, they called it a thank you gift, which I think is probably a little better than what we call it.
Yes, that probably is.
Oh, whatever. So the thank you gift is this Babbel subscription for 12 months. Foreign language learning, $10 a month, $120 all at once. You can study one language or all of them. Your subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel offers. It's a great deal, and you can get it. Again, $10 a month, $120 all at once at 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Here's a really nice one from a friend in Seekonk. I've got memories going back to my dad making dinner and listening to public radio in the kitchen. It's important to me to help keep this source of information alive.
That's good.
That's kind of neat, because I remember that too, people listening to different shows that were on here years and years ago, and growing up around here. I mean,
by the way, my father would have done that with me if he wasn't so busy getting disbarred. So he was... That was a time-consuming thing for him.
It's
so
a very good tragedy.
We didn't have time to listen to public radio.
At the lockup, Jim.
No, he was never. You said that for years. He was never locked up.
Okay.
He did lose his
Okay,
law
he did
license.
lose his law license. Well, that is very unfortunate. But anyway, we do have this thank you gift today. And many of you, when you do contribute, you write what you think about the station or what do you think about the show. And those are the ones we read. Those are people that call up and make their contribution. So we have this... the Babbel language app. I use that when one of my kids.
You did?
Yeah. Because there were 2 of them at the time. I forget the other one, but there were 2 different ones. I thought the Babbel one was much better in learning.
Did you learn anything?
Yes, you can learn how to I mean, I didn't get very far. Yes, rudimentary phrases.
Really? What
like,
language did you
where's
learn?
the bathroom and that kind of stuff.
Où est la salle de bain?
That's right.
Thank you very much.
Good, Jim. I'm very impressed.
That was not
anyway,
from
the
Babbel.
number, if you want to participate, and I hope you do, in our fundraising effort here. Otherwise, we'd have these endless commercials, which you would really hate. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow, Mayor Wu will be with us from 11 to 12 tomorrow for Ask the Mayor. And by the way, if you come to the library, you can ask her a question face-to-face if you choose. So Donald Trump ran on and has served for 3 weeks with vicious attacks on trans people at the center of his agenda. Executive orders banning gender-affirming care for minors, trans athletes in women's sports, other attempts to restrict civil rights in this country. Here with us now at the library is Alejandra Caraballo. She's a clinical instructor at Harvard Law School's Cyber Law Clinic, former staff attorney at the Transgender Legal Defense and Education Fund, and an activist for LGBTQ rights. And you can find her on Blue Sky at my absolute favorite handle in the history of the world, at squeer.net, ESQUEER.net. Alejandra, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Good to see you. Alejandra, thanks for coming in again. You know, as Jim mentioned, Trump campaigned and Republicans were endlessly talking about trans women in sports. Of course, they weren't saying, they were saying men in girls' sports and that kind of stuff. But I was kind of surprised, really, by the real emphasis on this, like he's got a real bee in his bonnet. It's just, so were you surprised? I mean, did you expect this sort of shutdown on health care and sports and everything else? Military, I mean, right down the line?
I was expecting all of these actions. I don't think I was expecting them quite so quickly through just pure executive orders. In the first Trump administration, they were attempting to do things like this, like the trans ban, limits on recognition, but it was all done through administrative actions, through this kind of arcane administrative rulemaking process. And so that usually would take time, months or even years. And instead, what they're doing is just going straight to executive orders, which are not law. They do not materially change the law. And he's basically doing it by fiat. And most of the actions that he's taken to ban gender-affirming care, to push people out of the trans people out of the military, limiting changes on passports, all these things, ending legal recognition, all of it is just being done by executive order. And none of it has actually enacted new policy, new rules. And most people are acting out of compliance from fear rather than an actual material change in the law. And I think that's what's been kind of the most shocking, is just institutions caving so quickly.
Well, I am kind of obsessed by this. Jim and I have been talking about this because it isn't...
This being the compliance...
When you are... issuing edicts that are illegal, why is everybody, including powerful institutions like Harvard, where you are, or Charlie Baker running the NCAA, or companies, I mean, just eliminating programs, why are they doing that? Why don't they just file a lawsuit or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we've seen over the last week, they're not even complying with the court orders that have tried to stop the actions that they're taking in other areas, such as the NIH cuts, the broader grant funding cuts. They're just still cutting those funds and grants and not paying them. And so I think there's a general sense that the rule of law is basically breaking down, and that even if they're correct on the law, like the NCAA, for instance, is not subject to Title IX because they're not recipients of federal funding. And so they would be able to withstand a challenge from the administration, but they don't want to deal with it. And they're not confident that they can win in the courts because by the time this goes to the courts, they'll probably be investigated by the FBI, investigated by the Department of Education, and they just don't want to go through that.
Can we discuss some of the specifics of this? Military, Pete Hegseth, when he was purely a sexual abuser and a drunk, wrote a book. He's now the Secretary of Defense, allegedly, by the way, of course, was saying trans people should not be able to serve in the military. A lot of trans people serve in the military. Tell us what problems they've created that merits Donald Trump saying they can no longer serve in the military. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of trans people serving.
Yeah, there's anywhere from about 8,000 to 15,000 trans military members, and they're oftentimes highly concentrated in specialist roles like cyber command. And so just mandating that they be separated immediately is just going to destroy readiness, unit cohesion, and not to mention destroy lives. I mean, people have built careers in the military, and trans people are disproportionately represented by careerists in the military. But
what's the problem that Trump and Hegseth are responding to? I mean, everything I've read said there is no problem internally. All the things they create are fictions about a lack of cohesion, division in the ranks, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Any evidence of what they're talking about?
There is none. And I think fundamentally what it speaks to is they fundamentally want to eradicate trans people from public life. And if you have a trans person in the military serving honorably, as most trans people in the military do, it serves as an example that you can be a trans person and you can be successful, you can integrate, you can be part of society and serve your country. And they don't want those positive examples. They don't want that because they want to push us out of public life.
There was an anecdote on the passport front. I forget if it was a trans man or trans woman, but anyway, said they'd been living as whatever they were for 18 years, 20 years, married, 3 kids, travels a lot. So now their whole ability to travel is kind of become a scary endeavor. Tell us about the passport rules.
Yeah, so they immediately changed the passport rule in the first week, within the first few days, and it's part of this broader executive order they issued on Inauguration Day. And essentially, it's been chaos because they didn't have clear guidance. They weren't saying how exactly they were going to handle it. People who sent their passports in to get renewed even the week before, a few weeks before Trump took office, suddenly got their passports put on hold. They were unsure if they were going to get them renewed, if they were being confiscated. There's been worries about people coming back into the country and presenting them to the Border Patrol. Right now, we don't have any confirmed instances of this happening, but these are credible fears of people having their passports confiscated when interacting with federal law enforcement. Or if they go to renew, they're going to have their gender markers reverted. And that leads to all kinds of potentials for harassment, especially for international travel. If you have a passport that doesn't match your gender identity, that can put you in real danger. And so it's created a real chilling effect for the trans community to even travel, even within the United States, because within a few months, we have to switch to real ID. And there's going to be questions about whether or not your state ID is going to be sufficient to travel, and then you might need a passport to travel on a plane. And so this is going to cause just absolute immense problems for the trans community.
Well, because if you've been living as a man for 20, 30 years, whatever it is, and then your passport says you're a woman, this is pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine someone with a big burly beard come in and then their passport saying F, because that's what the Trump administration is dictating. And suddenly, that's going to cause more security issues and more problems because people don't go by what's on a gender marker. They all go visually about
what you look like.
Yeah.
Alejandra, we have to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about where the American people are on these things, because I assume Trump wouldn't be doing it if he didn't think it worked, and a lot of people believe it's one of the reasons, other than promising to bring the price of eggs down, that he's the president of the United States for a second time. So let's take a pledge break, and then we'll continue with that.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Braude, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
888-897-9424 at gbhnews.org. So we do these pledge drives a few times a year because, as I said before, we are not supported by commercials. We're not commercial radio that has commercials. We used to do it, Jim and I, 3 times an hour, and usually 5 or 6 or sometimes 7 minutes long. It's a lot of commercials. We don't do that.
Made a lot of money doing it.
We made a lot of money. That's right. Jim was selling virility pills, and I was selling mattresses. Maybe I was. Yeah, maybe you were. Anyway, we don't do that here, and we depend on the generosity of people who listen to us. That's where we get more than 70% of our budget. So we are not particularly popular with the Trump administration either, which makes this a particularly fraught time for National Public Radio and public broadcasting. So that's something to think about, too, if you've been hesitating on giving. Here's some of the nice notes we got from people that did give today. This is Hannah in Boston. GBH provides thoughtful, trustworthy access to the news at a time where misinformation is everywhere. Nancy in Marblehead, I'm supporting GBH because we are like-minded humans who care about other people. Those are people who have donated this morning to this station, and we're very grateful for them. And we're very grateful for what they had to say. So we have the what's it called? The Babbel. The learning app. If you're going to go, well, you just want to learn another language, I guess you can do that. That's supposed to help your mind develop in older age, Jim. Learning another language, much better than crossword puzzles. But if you're just going to go visit a friend that overseas or family members overseas, this is a great way to get that basic knowledge that makes you feel a little bit less intimidated by going to a country where people speak a totally different language than yours. So that's for $10 a month, and you get a 1-year ad-free subscription. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And by the way, I just learned this morning we only have one more day in this winter pledge drive, so now's the opportunity, if you intend to give, to do it rather than forgetting about it, getting busy, procrastinating, not doing it, feeling bad about it. It's happened to me many times. So take a minute right now. It's a really brief process. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Marjorie and I have told you repeatedly that long before we worked here, we used to give to NPR and to GBH, and it feels good. I mean, you do what you can afford, and you feel, I think, a deeper connection to the organization that a lot of you are saying is your lifeline in terms of facts and honesty about what's going on in the world. So if you're in that camp, please do what you can, what you can afford right now at 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Braude, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. We're continuing our conversation with LGBTQ activist, Harvard's Alejandra Caraballo.
So, politicians, certain politicians are really good at wedge issues. When George W. Bush was running for president, the big issue was gay marriage, made a big stink about that. Now people are down with gay marriage. This time it was all about trans women's in sports. Those NFL ads, I think, probably hurt Kamala Harris a lot, because I think a lot of people, what is the numbers, 80-20 or something like that, don't think sports, there should be that mix up in sports. So how do you deal with that going forward, winning hearts and minds?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to speak to the facts, and I think here, when the NCAA president was testifying in Congress, they asked him how many trans athletes there were in the NCAA. 10. Out of 500,000 athletes nationwide, 10. And so the amount of money that they spent, over $200+ million messaging on this issue, especially in terms of gender affirming care for trans people who are incarcerated as well, is just so vastly disproportionate. It's perfectly what creates a scapegoat here, because we're just such a small minority group that they can just go after and scapegoat for all of society's problems, and then effectively have no political pushback when they go after us. But make no mistake, the way that they're going after us on these issues is affecting everybody. The NIH cuts, these broader cuts on grants, they're citing the executive order from day one saying defending women from gender ideology, and they're going in and banning words like biological male or biological female, or even just the word female, gender, all these things. And so these things are impacting everyone, but they're trying to make it seem like they're just going after trans people, but in the reality, it's hurting everyone.
But we talk a lot about Harvard these days, part of where you work, and Harvard could not more quickly bend their knee. Every time Donald Trump speaks, they want to be first in line to get rid of DEI, to get rid of this, get rid of... You work at Harvard. Do you use the athletic facilities from time to time?
Yeah, let's just be clear, I speak for myself in
I
a personal capacity.
Of course I know that, but I'm asking you to speak for yourself. Do you use the athletic facilities from time to time?
Yeah, I regularly use the MAC.
Are you worried about that in you?
I mean, ultimately, I don't know what the Trump administration is going to do, but I know we have civil rights law here in Massachusetts, and gender identity is protected under civil rights law here. So if Harvard wants to cave to the administration, they're going to be violating state law here.
But that's the lawyer in you speaking.
Yes.
Let's address the human in you speaking. It's got to be pretty tough and scary. Even if you're a trans person, if you're directly affected, I assume it's terrifying. Even if you're not directly affected by an executive order or whatever the hell he does, I assume that it's. We talk a lot about this mass deportation thing, and how people are not taking their kids to school or to a doctor, or they're not going to work for fear of getting grabbed. So I assume the impact of this is to create fear even where there's not action.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been using the Harvard gym for 4 years, and no problem. Never had an issue. I regularly go with my partner, and we go and use the swimming pool and everything else. But it does make you think twice, because you're like, is someone going to take issue with this, or is somebody going to particularly target me because of my profile, and try to make an issue out of it, and then invite an action by the Trump administration. But at the end of the day, I think for me, it's like, look, of course, those are reasonable fears and worries to have as a trans person person in this moment, but I can't let fear rule my life. And so I'm just going to continue living my life as I have, and I'm not going to let them dictate how I live it.
Speaking of targeting you, isn't Elon Musk targeted you? He is, talk about a badge of honor. It doesn't get much better than that. One of the, did you file an amicus in this Media Matters case?
Yeah.
Can you briefly describe to people what the case is about and what Musk's concern is?
Yeah, I think it was very prescient because I filed this brief in December, and it was a case involving Media Matters where he sued them because he was Media Matters issued a report about how they had Nazi content on Twitter, and they were doing nothing to take it down. And so Musk sued them in Texas, where he had a very favorable court. And we filed an amicus brief on behalf of Fight for the Future back in December. And one of the things I said in the brief was, he has an ear to the administration, and he could start threatening criminal prosecution, even though he can't bring those charges himself and he can threaten those criminal prosecution against his critics. And what we've seen in the last week, as journalists at the Wall Street Journal, Catherine Long, uncovered racist tweets by a DOGE team member, and other journalists have uncovered other unsavory racist posts by members of the DOGE team. Elon Musk started threatening to go after the journalist and said that she should be fired. And then the acting U.S. attorney in Washington was threatening criminal prosecution against anyone who interferes with DOGE. And it's one of those things where it's like, we saw this exact thing happening with private litigation, and now that he is part of the government, he's threatening the use of government to go after his critics.
And by the way, we should say the impact of Media Matters saying there's a lot of Nazi and other hate stuff on Twitter was a lot of businesses said, I don't want to have end up having my tweet right next to this Nazi propaganda. So a lot of them stopped advertising, and which is their right to do, and that's what he has all upset about. We're talking to Alejandra Caraballo.
So I want to ask you about Representative Sarah McBride. People may know she's a congresswoman from Delaware, and she's the highest-ranking transgender elected official in the whole country. And she's the one that got into the big thing with Nancy Mace about the bathroom in Congress. But she's trying to walk the middle, I think. She says she's not a martyr. She doesn't want to constantly... I mean, do you have any advice for her, I guess I'm asking?
She's basically saying pick your spots.
She's saying pick your spots, but she's taken flack, that she's not out front enough on trans issues. Other people think she should be not so out in front. What do you think?
I do not envy her position, I will say. She has the ear of a lot of folks that are giving her a ton of advice. But, I would say essentially, 2 years ago, I think that approach would have been just great. And I think this moment is fundamentally different as we're seeing the collapse of American democracy, that this idea that you can just be quiet and dignified and just weather these attacks and just the constant indignities that you're going under, people will see and respond with empathy and want to respond with kindness and try to fight back against the hate. I don't think that's the moment we're in right now. Yeah. I fundamentally believe this is a moment you have to fight back, because ultimately right now the cultural currency is cruelty, and just sitting back and taking it isn't going to win in this moment, because no one is responding with kindness and empathy at this moment.
We have only 30 seconds left, but really quickly, have any veterans groups come forward to defend the trans military people? Have you heard much of anything? I haven't.
There's a trans veteran group called Sparta that has been behind the scenes organizing a lot of different things. I have not been. There's just been such a deluge. It's hard to keep track of even specific statements by veterans groups. But I know, it's been a deafening silence, I think, overall.
Alejandra, we're really glad you're doing what you're doing. It's good to see you again.
Yeah,
Please come
thank
back
you.
soon.
Thank you
so
very,
much.
very much. We've been talking with LGBTQ rights activist Harvard's Alejandra Caraballo, and we're very happy that she could come in and join us. After a quick break, we're going to be talking more on the legal front, the Trump administration. Oh, I should say, you want to find her at Blue Sky at esqueer.net. That's esqueer.net. Sorry, I should have said that earlier, because she is the former staff attorney, transgender legal defense and education fund and activist, as I just said, in LGBTQ rights, at esqueer.net. Okay, up next, more on the legal front of the Trump administration, as he signals he may defy court orders against his executive actions. The ACLU of Massachusetts Executive Director Carol Rose joins us to discuss that. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming.com/GBH News.
The GBH Winter Membership Drive is ending tomorrow. Your contribution now is essential to keep Boston Public Radio and all the programs you value on the air and available to all. If you can give, please do so now by giving online at gbhnews.org or calling 888-897-9424. I'm Melissa Jones, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Liz Lavoie.
And the goal right now is 15 contributions in the next 7 minutes. In an era filled with misleading information, GBH remains a trusted voice you can depend on. By giving now, you help GBH continue our mission of providing accurate and factual news. Please give $10, maybe $15 a month or more on the Sustainer Plan and help us meet this goal. Just 15 contributions in the next 6 minutes now. Help us out at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
And if you can give at $10 a month right now, we will thank you with a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. If you're not familiar with Babbel, you get to study one language or multiple languages, up to 14 different choices during your 1-year subscription. It's only available today until 7 o'clock, so please don't miss this opportunity to support GBH and get this great opportunity to treat yourself to a new language or 2 or 4. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
Everything you count on from GBH, the trusted news, in-depth investigations, conversations right here on Boston Public Radio, counts on your support. In these moments of challenge, possibility, and progress, GBH is more relevant than ever. And that means your generous support for the news you trust is more necessary and powerful than ever. You can make your gift at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
The news has been complicated and kind of intense over the past few months, and you probably have relied on GBH even more to keep informed. It's the next to last day of our winter membership drive, so if you've been meaning to give but just haven't had a chance, I'm asking you to please do so right now. You will keep the news coming and help end the membership drive successfully tomorrow. You can give now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
And this is great. We're moving right along on our goal. I want to give a thank you to Christy in Dorchester, who writes, "We've been longtime supporters but fell off the wagon. We feel that now more than ever, it's important to have everyone step up and support public radio. We are avid fans of Jim and Marjorie and The Culture Show. Don't know how we'd get by without them." That is perfectly said, Christy. If you find yourself agreeing with Christy, you can make your gift of support at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Thanks to Christy and other people who have given, we're down to 9 contributions that we're looking for in just the next 3 minutes or so. And we're looking to stay on track right now so we can keep GBH and NPR playing that vital role in delivering trustworthy news that you rely on. So please give now. Make sure we can wrap up this drive on target and keep serving you with the news that you turn to GBH to look for. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
That's right. Help us reach that goal. And while you're at it, when you support GBH at $10 a month, you can receive a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You can study one language or multiple languages. It includes Spanish, French, German, Italian, Portuguese, so much more. Your subscription provides access to all 14 languages that Babbel offers. Sign up as a sustaining member to GBH at just $10 a month. Ask for that 12-month subscription to Babbel, or you can also give $120 all at once. Head to gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Every time you turn on GBH, you hear the difference. The in-depth and unbiased news, the thoughtful and civil conversations, stories told in a way that only GBH tells them. It is truly news that matters. And if you've never given before, now is the time to invest in GBH. It's the next to last day of our drive, and your gift right now can get us to that goal and keep us serving you with the news that you come to expect and deserve here on GBH. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And today we're encouraging you to join GBH as a sustaining member. It's the best way to support your daily listening. You choose a monthly amount to give, whether that's $5, $10, $20 a month, and it's automatically deducted from your bank account or credit card. It's affordable because you pay just a little bit each month, and that monthly contribution, it adds up to a significant support for the news and entertainment programming you trust and depend on. And enrolling is very easy. You can head over to gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
And how about becoming a sustainer right now at just $10 a month? And we can thank you with that wonderful language learning app, Babbel. We have that in my home. Me and the kids are actually learning languages, which is super fun. But this goes away at 7 o'clock tonight. So I want to make sure that you don't miss this opportunity to support the news that you depend on here at GBH and get this great learning app. You can do that right now when you go to gbhnews.org or give us a call at 888-897-9424. Your gift is the one that makes the difference for the things that matter to you here at GBH.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Dover Rug and Home. Rugs and carpeting for today's lifestyle with in-home rug trial and design consultation. Dover Rug in Natick, Boston, Burlington, and online at doverrug.com. Dover Rug, rugs and the people who know them. And American Repertory Theater, presenting The Odyssey. From the Cyclops to the Sirens, audiences can experience this cultural touchstone's mythical adventures like never before. Now playing through March 16th. amrep.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. We're talking with Carol Rose, Executive Director of the Massachusetts Civil Liberties Union. 3 weeks into Donald Trump's second term, federal judges, attorneys general, and labor unions are all stepping up to block the actions coming from the Trump's administration they believe are unconstitutional. We'll get Carol's thoughts as the Trump administration signals he may defy court rulings that he disagrees with. Is a constitutional crisis in the offing?
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then a little uplift. Nikki, Shults, and Stephen Pina are two people behind Everyday Boston's Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor campaign. They're trying to get Bostonians to handwrite cards for strangers to help all of us feel a little more connected to one another this Valentine's Day. All that ahead, Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is hosting Jordan's King Abdullah II at the White House today. Their meeting taking place against the backdrop of a fragile ceasefire and hostages for prisoners agreement between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Yesterday, Trump proposed a ceasefire be canceled if Hamas does not release all remaining hostages taken since the start of the war. Trump has also promoted Israel hand control of Gaza to the United States and relocate the Palestinian people to other parts of the Middle East, an idea strongly opposed by Arab governments across the region. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell says the central bank's not in a hurry to continue cutting interest rates.
We know that reducing policy restraint too fast or too much could hinder progress on inflation.
Testifying before the Senate Banking Committee today, Powell says inflation is still somewhat elevated over the Fed's 2% goal, but has eased significantly over the past 2 years. U.S. embassies are struggling to oversee humanitarian aid the Trump administration is allowing to go through. That's according to the Inspector General of the embattled U.S. Agency for International Development. Here's NPR's Michelle Kellerman.
When the Trump administration came to office, it put most foreign aid on hold, but Secretary of State Marco Rubio has allowed for emergency humanitarian relief to continue. The trouble is, USAID staff around the world have been getting mixed signals, losing access to their emails and being put on administrative leave before a judge temporarily halted that. Now USAID's Inspector General is reporting that the agency has limited ability to oversee what aid is going through. There's food aid at risk of spoilage, according to the report, and a concern that there's not enough staff to vet partners in the Middle East to make sure U.S. taxpayer money is not benefiting terrorist groups. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
The first of 3 predicted storms packing a little bit of everything winter has to offer is on the move. NPR's Giles Snyder with details.
The first storm is moving east out of Kansas, where Governor Laura Kelly has declared a state of emergency. The storm will bring significant snow and ice accumulations to the mid-Atlantic. Winter storm warnings extend from Kentucky to southern New Jersey. And Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin has also declared an emergency amid warnings of treacherous travel conditions and potential power outages. conditions. On the heels of the first storm, another round of heavy snow from a second storm is expected from Kansas and Missouri into the Great Lakes and will be on the East Coast by Thursday morning. A third significant storm is expected to bring the threat of flooding to California, especially to areas devastated by last month's wildfires around Los Angeles. Giles Snyder, NPR News.
The Dow is up 45 points. The Nasdaq is down 94. You're listening to NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. The state's highest court refused to dismiss 2 charges against Karen Reed today, clearing the way for the second trial to go forward. Reed is accused of fatally striking her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. A judge declared a mistrial in the first case. The state Supreme Judicial Court agreed with the defense claim that trying Reed again on charges of second-degree murder and leaving the scene of a crash amounts to double jeopardy. The dean of the Massachusetts School of Law, Michael Coyne, says that ruling upholds the trial court judge's decision to retry Reed.
There was no verdict rendered in open court, and that's consistent with the law in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, that then that verdict is, in fact, a non-verdict, and double jeopardy does not bar a retrial.
The second trial is scheduled to begin in April. Cambridge City Councilors have approved a proposal that allows developers to put up 4-story residential buildings across the city. The final vote to approve the new construction ends single-family-only zoning, as councilors try to alleviate that city's housing crisis. It means developers can now build 4-story multifamily housing in the city's residential districts, and they can also build 6-story buildings on larger lots if 2 stories are reserved for affordable housing. Trader Joe's is the latest grocery store to limit the number of eggs that customers can buy due to ongoing shortages caused by the bird flu. Customers can only buy 1 dozen eggs a day in Trader Joe locations across the U.S. Costco also limiting egg purchases to 3 packages of eggs per visit. A chilly Tuesday, plenty of sunshine. Mostly cloudy tonight, lows in the teens. Clouding up Wednesday night, highs in the 30s, and snow's possible into Thursday, lows in the 20s. It's 27 in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Capital One, offering their premium travel card, Venture X. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. Details at CapitalOne.com. And listeners like you who donate to this NPR station.
Jim Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention that we're going to be back here tomorrow, Wednesday, and Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is going to join us between 11 and noontime for another edition of Asks the Mayor. Hello again, Jim.
And she'll be here in person, by the way, for those who have been asking. We're joined now at the library by one of the people who must be one of the busiest people in America, Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, Carol Rose. Good afternoon, Carol.
Good afternoon. It's great to be here.
Great to see you.
So, Carol, we just finished talking with Alejandra Caraballo. She's an attorney over at Harvard, and she's an activist on LGBTQ and trans stuff, about the real cruel stuff that's coming down the pike from the Trump administration, particularly about trans people. And I'm wondering what can be done about this, if anything, from a legal perspective? What can the ACLU do?
Well, the ACLU is already doing a lot. We're filing a lot of lawsuits against these really horrible attacks, trying to erase people from public life in the United States. And so we have a couple of lawsuits that we filed. The first is on efforts to try to get rid of gender-affirming care for people under the age of 19, which is one of the first executive orders. And obviously that's incredibly dangerous for people who are, already getting their therapy and already doing things, and they were unable to sort of access health care. This is a fundamental right. And the principle at stake isn't just about making sure that transgender people have equal rights under the law, but it's also making sure that the federal government the president can't come in and issue an executive order and say that they're going to take away health care for other people, because if they can do it to one disfavored group, they can do it to other disfavored groups that they decide they've disfavored. And similarly, the other lawsuit, which we just filed last Friday here in Massachusetts, has to do with sex designations on passports. So this is a circumstance where the Department of State is holding people's passports in some instances, or refusing to properly put the right designation, the right gender designation on a person's passport. And so they're either giving people the wrong passport back, or they're actually holding the passport and refusing to give it to people. And we have about we've heard from like over 1,500 people who are concerned that they're not able to access their passports. And so this is incredibly dangerous. Again, not only for the rights of transgender people who should have a right, whether it's a right to travel, due process, free speech, I mean, there are a lot of claims here, but again, for all of us, because if on principle, the government is able to manipulate or control you through your travel documents, I mean, that's really scary stuff. And so we need to nip that in the bud, and that's why the ACLU has gone to court right away.
You know, getting back to the gender affirming care for people under 19, you said, you know, the government shouldn't be able to take health care away from any disfavored group, because if they do it to trans people, they'll do it to you next. Well, they did it already with abortion.
Right.
And so,
Exactly.
So in light of the fact that the Supreme Court said that was fine for states who don't want to do it, don't have to do it, why is what Trump is doing around this gender affirming care thing, why is that illegal if taking away abortion rights is not illegal?
Well, first of all, we disagree with the fact that abortion rights were taken away at the federal level.
I know, but unfortunately, the Supreme Court gets the final word. We don't.
What the court did in the Dobbs decision was to say it's up to the states. What this executive order is
Dobbs
doing,
which
overturned Roe v. Wade, right?
Yeah.
But what this is an executive branch, so it's not a piece of legislation and it's not a judicial ruling. It's an assertion of
that's what Alejandra
executive power. Not to mention the fact that it's trying to do it nationwide. And so in places like Massachusetts, where that care is protected, the fact that the federal government would come in and try to take it away is incredibly unconstitutional and illegal, and that's why the ACLU is taking them to court.
Is there, you know, I know that in Trump's first election, we talked to you about how contributions were through the roof to the Civil Liberties Union because of the fear of what Trump was doing. I would say this is Trump on steroids, and then some. 3 weeks in, you're involved in challenging, and there have been several challenges, to this ending birthright citizenship, which is right in there in the 14th Amendment. I fear, you know, a lot of people say he's the genius of distraction. There's only so many resources, I assume, that the Civil Liberties Union has.
Right.
This is one where I haven't heard one person other than some sycophant like Stephen Miller say that Trump is on solid legal ground. Is it possible, since this is such potentially a loser for him, this is purely so that resources are spent on something that he has no chance of winning? So how do you deal with that when by next week, there are going to be another 100 issues that need challenging?
So one of the really good things that I can just like share with you and with your listeners is that, you know, we've had hundreds of people sign up as lawyers to help to do cases with us. And we've had thousands of people sign up to become, you know, engaged and active and to take actions at the ACLU. So, you know, we have more resources in that sense of people power. Kinds of resources to be able to do that. But we're having to pick and choose. I mean, there's so many egregious things, over 100, I think, executive orders already.
I mean, based on resources occasionally.
Yeah, based on resources. And also some of the time, you know, other groups are doing it, you know, on the firing of all the federal employees. You know, I think AFL-CIO has filed a case and on other things. So we're trying to also make sure that we are disciplined in how we respond and not gaslit.
Okay, can I ask my question that I'm obsessed with?
Sure.
A lot of these things that he's done are illegal. So when you're talking about the firing of federal employees, my question is, if it's illegal, why do they all get fired? Why don't they just file suit immediately and they stay in their jobs while the case winds its way through?
You don't mean why do they all get fired? Why do they leave?
Yeah, why do they leave?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think some of them are remote. And they're just like locked out, literally locked out. Others, I think, are locked out of their buildings. So, I mean, part of it is they're not just fired, but they're also then shut out of their access to their computer, so they're unable to do their work.
So that the law enforcement people you might get to unlock those buildings wouldn't be able to do it because the President of the United States says you can't.
So as long as, you know, so that's why we're working to try to get an injunction.
That's fragile and upsetting.
I mean, I'll just say it out loud. We need to say it's a constitutional crisis. You know, we're in a constitutional crisis. And so what we have to do is to say, okay, what are we going to do about it? Because just saying, oh my God, isn't enough. We actually have to take action. And the way we take action is for each of us, we have really strong institutions in this country, at the state level, still in the courts, and with the people. And we have to go forward and try to try to hope that our institutions will hold. And in the meantime, the way we make them hold is for each of us to get engaged and involved.
And tell me why constitutional crisis matters to the average Jane and Joe who may not even know what that is.
Well, I think the problem is we don't want to have a king. We had a revolution in this country so that we wouldn't just have a king who made all the decisions through fiat, right? That's why we have the 3 branches of government, and everybody learns in 8th grade civics that you have, a check and a balance on the 3 branches of government. And so here we have a situation where laws that were passed by Congress, including funding laws that were passed by Congress, there's an effort to try to overturn them with fiat, with an executive order by the president, as if the president were king. And it's tremendously important that we push back on that. And if Congress, I still think, it's really, the other thing people need to know, everybody keeps saying he got a majority. He didn't, he won a plurality. So
right.
More than Paris did, but not a majority, number one. And two, there's a very small margin. I think it's 217 to 215 in the House. So there's still
Can I say this
a lot
as
of room to
respectfully
play.
as possible?
Mm-hmm.
That does nothing for me. He was elected President of the United States under the rules that exist. And I worry, and by the way, this is not directed at you. I'm
Right.
very fond of you. All the people are saying this. The people who voted for the winner are saying, we played by the rules, and you apparently don't like the rules. You don't need to get a majority. All you need to do is get more than the other person.
No, nobody's saying he
So
shouldn't.
how does that advance?
Well, but no, here's 2 things. One is, I think it's important to counter the public narrative that somehow he has a mandate. I don't think that's true. He may have power, but he doesn't have a mandate. And there's a big difference between that. And that means that there's still a lot of levers in the system. The fact that he won the White House doesn't mean that
Well, there
he
are a
has
lot of
the right
levers
to
in the system, even if he got 60% of the vote. If he's violating the Constitution, he's
I
violating
know, but
the
I
Constitution.
just think a lot of people sort of give in on that.
Okay,
I
so-
just think it's that when we give in before we have to, we're really playing into the dictators.
I hear you, but I think we should fight on the merits, not on how much he won an election by. Having said that, Marjorie gave some very sound advice to me this morning that I'm going to pass on to you. What she said to me, respectfully, was, Jim, you and your ilk kept talking about the end of democracy during the campaign and including Kamala Harris, and persuaded nobody.
Right.
Nobody knows, as she just intimated, what a constitutional crisis is.
What does that mean for
and
Joe
why it
and
matters.
Jane?
So let's talk
That they
about
can't buy
let's talk
pizza
about
on
the
Friday
ultimate
night?
constitutional crisis to me, when the Vice President of the United States says, as he did yesterday, Vance, judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. The Elon Musk, the other president, says that we should impeach the judge who made a decision we don't like, is leading people to think that, in this case, Vance and Musk are Trump's surrogates, basically laying the foundation to say, if we don't like what a judge does, we're going to ignore their order. And as has been said a million times in the last 24 hours, even Richard Nixon turned over the tapes when the Supreme Court of the United States said, I think unanimously.
Are doing it.
Okay,
They're ignoring the order about giving back the federal funds that were frozen.
Right, the Rhode Island case with Judge McConnell, I think his name is there. So as obvious as it may be to most of us, how do you argue that, what's your argument on the so-called constitutional crisis around a president of the United States refusing to comply with a judge's order? Saying, I assume he say, this is what the public wants, they're wrong on the Constitution, et cetera, et cetera. And some people are fearful, and I am among them, that even the Supreme Court orders, if he doesn't like in the second term, he's going to ignore as well. What do you say to...
Well, at that point, our Constitution our democracy is under direct assault, and I think we're very close to that point, Jim. But in the meantime, what we want to do is to see if we can protect it. And there's so many tools that we aren't using. So far they actually... There are court orders, there are state protections. Our legislature, our cities and towns can do things. People are already flooding Congress with calls. I really think it's important to recognize that they're the resistance, not us. The resistance are the people that are trying to keep the flow of democracy going. We're trying to make it go forward. They're trying to put up a dam and stop it. I just think it's important that we not give in and start to say, well, they're going to violate, they're going to ignore the rules anyway, so we may as well not bother. I actually think it matters, and it matters for history, and it matters for our institutions, and it does matter for our democracy, and each of us has a role to play. So I really urge us not to give in to the despair, because that's what they're trying to get us to do, to self-censor, to have despair overwhelm us. We can't do that.
Okay, I already gave in to the despair. Now, we're going to take a break. When we come back, here's what I would like. Can we start with the following?
Sure.
As soon as we come back from the pledge break, if and when Donald Trump refuses to comply with the judge's order, what happens? What happens next? We'll do that right after we do this.
And how does it impact the regular person sitting at their kitchen table?
Great.
That's what I want to know. Anyway, we're going to talk with Carol Rose all about those very important questions when we return from a pledge break. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference, but please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
I think if you were listening yesterday, I tried to hide my whatever, but it's clear I was not a big fanny pack fan. Marjorie was. Belt bag, excuse me. I did my best for the cause, but I just couldn't. However, today's enticement, thank you, is spectacular. For $10 a month or $120 all at once, you get a year's subscription on any device you have, and they work across devices, to any and all of the 14 languages that are taught on Babbel. As I said, I've never done Babbel. Marjorie did it. She's liked it. I have a lot of friends, not a lot, I have a few friends who have done it, and each of them, without one exception, when I've asked them in prior pledge drives, says they could not believe how easy and effective it was. So that's one reason to give. The other reason, which is much more important than the gift, is because you value what you get from our colleagues here at the station, as do we. If you do, give whatever you can. If it's $10 a month and $120 for the Babbel thing, fine. If it's more because you have more to give, fine. And if you only have a few bucks, do that to be part of this operation. You do that by calling 888-897-9424 or going to gbhnews.org.
Yeah, the Babbel thing is really neat. If you're going to go, say you're going to go to France, you're going to go to Spain, it actually does 14 languages. But those places, you can work on it at home, on your phone, or on any of your devices, and you can pick up where you left off, which is a big thing. So if you start working on it in the morning on your phone and later in the afternoon on your computer, it picks up where you left off. So you can, what do you always say, Jim? Le libre sur la table.
Le livre est sur la table.
Le livre sur la table, that's
right. What
right.
does that mean, Marjorie?
It means the book is on the table.
Very nicely done.
And anyway, it helps you if you're not. You may not become fluent. I mean, some people might become fluent, yeah. But you can certainly learn enough to get around and understand what people are saying, which is a big deal if you're traveling in a country where English is not the language.
Do you remember when Barack Obama was president? He said, "In this country, if you know how to say merci beaucoup, you think you're bilingual," which is totally true. The only country in the world where we don't value learning other languages.
So that is our present for today. $10 a month. You get a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. And as I said, it goes 14 languages, and that's quite a few languages to cover. So that makes you a sustaining member. You get the little magazine from GBH. You get to be recorded so our budget people know how much they have for the year, which is particularly important this year. The deadline for this Babbel language program is at 7 o'clock tonight. So if you've been waiting, this is the next to last day of pledge. Don't wait anymore because we're almost out of time here. 7 o'clock for the Babbel language. Who knows what's going to be the enticement tomorrow, Jim? 888-897-9424 is the number, gbhnews.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us in person tomorrow from 11 to noon for Ask the Mayor. You can ask her anything you want on phone, text, or just come here and you can do it face to face. We are continuing our conversation with Carol Rose, who's the Executive Director of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts.
So I'll pick up where Jim left off. The threat to democracy thing didn't work that well for Kamala Harris, and I don't know if constitutional crisis. What does it mean to people? I mean, why should they care about a constitutional crisis if they're not, into the separation of powers and constitutional issues? You know what I mean?
Right. No, I think what we're looking at is someone who would be king, and in fact anoint Elon Musk to be the king, apparently, who would take away all of your public benefits. So, could take away your health care, could take away your Social Security, could take away your job, could take away your privacy, could take away all of these things, not to mention destroying the economy. The farmers are going to, when they find out that their corn and soybeans aren't going to be purchased anymore by USAID and shipped overseas, they're going to have a big hit.
So say, for example, if you were somebody that was a critic of the president and all of a sudden your Social Security check didn't come at the end of the month. I mean, that is possible with our 19-year-old friend from Northeastern, Big Boss, running the show up there at the Treasury. He's one of the kids that Musk has hired. I mean, that could happen, and you might not have a recourse.
Well, I mean, I think people will take to the streets if that were to happen. If they start to actually get hit on their pocketbook issues, which they will, if this administration isn't somehow reined in by the courts. But I also think people need to remember they're trying these things on for size. They're saying, I'm watching the headlines, so maybe we won't comply, maybe we won't. They're trying it out. And it's so important that all of us, whether we're journalists or lawyers or teachers or anyone, says, well, that's wrong, that's illegal. You actually, that would be illegal. That would violate the Constitution. That may not stop them, but I really think it's important that we raise our voices collectively and individually and name these things, and not just, acquiesce in advance and say, well, I guess there's nothing we can do to stop them. I think we need to try, and I think when the constituents of members of Congress get angry enough, they're going to also want to do something.
Well, having said that, right now on CNN, there are quotes from 4 cowardly, sycophantic Republican leaders in the United States Senate who are asked about Donald Trump potentially not honoring Supreme Court rulings. They could not dance any faster.
Saying judges cannot dictate what I can do. What are they talking about? Thousands of people have been sent to Walpole for 30 years because of a judge.
There was a case in 1803 that also says ultimate constitutionality, Marbury versus Madison, is determined by the courts. I want to discuss one other thing with you, or at least a couple of things maybe that Trump is doing that really put me over the edge last night. We're going to talk to John King from CNN about the pardon of the former governor of Illinois, who is on tape, trying to sell Barack Obama's Senate seat to the highest bidder. And we're going to play some sound. He was interviewed by Anderson Cooper a couple of years ago, talking about how he was a political prisoner, a la Nelson Mandela. Oh, my God.
It's bad
but that's for John King. What I want to talk to you about is, I don't have the legal knowledge you do. I'm sort of a half-assed lawyer. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City. He was indicted by the feds for corruption, taking bribes and that sort of thing.
100,000 in free flights and all that kind of thing.
Yesterday, the Justice Department put out a directive. We're going to dismiss the charges against him, not because he's not guilty, not because the facts are not there, and this is not an exaggeration, friends, because the determination was made that this is distracting him from running for re-election and from helping with the deportation of people. This is real, everybody.
And even beyond that, they dismissed without prejudice, which means that they could bring the charges back if he doesn't comply.
Okay, comply meaning deporting, helping deport. So you've been around for a long time. Have you ever in your whole career heard a prosecutor say, I'm going to end a prosecution because a friend, a supporter of mine, needs more time to help me deport people and needs to run for re-election? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
We're in a brave new world. I mean, everything is different. Nothing is logical. Nothing is constitutional anymore. So we're just living in this brave new world. And that's why I do think that this is a moment where we as a nation have to really ask ourselves, are we willing to fight for our democracy? Are we willing to stand up for it, to
The answer
march
is no.
for it?
53% in the poll we did yesterday, CBS News, say they support, give job approval rating to the guy who's doing all the things you're talking about.
Let's wait and see once those kitchen table issues start coming down. I mean, eggs aren't even available anymore. And when I was in the grocery store the other day, I could get little ones for $8 and a dozen of extra large for like $12.
They had none at all when I was at Trader Joe's. They were wiped out.
They were completely wiped out. Wow, it's like toilet paper during COVID.
So, we discuss a lot here the cowardice of huge institutions and their leaders, whether it's Harvard, which literally jumps the second Trump talks. Anything they do a second and a half later. Why are prosecutors and former prosecutors not rising up in huge numbers? I mean, Marjorie and I saw this letter from 5 former Treasury secretaries about, I think, the freezing of funds today. And it's 5 Democratic. I mean, okay. Where are the Republicans? They're not concerned about governmental integrity, rule of law, that sort of thing. Where are the prosecutors standing up and saying, This Eric Adams thing cannot stand. The pardon of Rod Blagojevich cannot stand.
Well,
silence.
No, and I agree. I mean, somebody said to me, they're not idiots, they're just cowards.
It's exactly right.
And I think that history will judge this. I mean, I'm so sad about Harvard in particular because during the Joe McCarthy period when there was a McCarthyism and the anti, anybody, have you ever associated with the communist kind of thing? Well, Harvard led the charge to make sure that didn't infect the universities. It came into Hollywood, but it didn't come into the universities because Harvard took the lead. And this time around, not only are they not fighting, they're actively, jumping ahead of time. They're acquiescing in advance. And so it's incredibly discouraging to see that happen from our large private institutions here in Massachusetts. And I hope that people who are alumni of these colleges and universities will let people know how unhappy they are about it because, we have to use whatever powers we can, and we're safer when we work in platforms and we work together. And that's why I hope people will find a platform, whether it's the ACLU or Indivisible or whatever group that you support, Sunrise Movement, that you get involved and engaged because we're more powerful and we're stronger when we come together and try to counter some of these institutional pressures.
We're talking to Carol Rose, who's head of the Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts.
So Elon Musk, as we know, is taking over all these agencies with his little band of 19, 20, and 22-year-olds that are running around, these coders that he's hired. This is an incredible story about what used to happen, and this is the first Trump administration, where they had at the Education Department, which is run by Betsy DeVos. People weren't that crazy about her if they were on the Democratic side. But anyway, they had they'd gone through this diversity training program in 2017, and they had a big party kind of to celebrate the end of the whole thing. And Betsy DeVos was fine with it, and it was all wonderful. Do you know what's happened to some of these workers now that went to this party celebrating it? They're put on leave. They're training that they were encouraged to attend under the Trump administration, and they needed to do this to keep their jobs.
Wow.
Now they're getting blackballed because they were training in 2017, authorized by the same guy as the president now.
Right. I do think that one of the things to keep in mind is if the Trump and Elon Musk administration are able to sort of shut down the federal government and fire all these civil servants, there are a lot of things that aren't going to happen, including obviously good things like getting your Social Security check or those kinds of things, but also a lot of bad things aren't going to be able to happen because they're not going to be able to, they won't have anybody to enforce their bad ideas because people will just shut them down. And I just think that that's why it's so important that we band together. And that's why I'm so pleased. Like, the workers are suing. They are litigating it. They aren't just giving up their jobs. I saw a chart that showed, like, the number of people historically who leave the civil service at the federal level from a historical perspective, and then since you offered the buyout.
I mean, normal turnover.
And it's lower. Yeah. And it's lower, right? And same thing, they're making all these threats about doing these ICE raids and roundups. The actual number hasn't gone up. The difference is now they have like Fox News ride-alongs.
Oh.
And so they're making it look bigger. There's a fair amount of smoke and mirrors going on because fear is such a powerful tool in an authoritarian regime.
Actually, I read this morning, and I wish I had the piece in front of me so I could quote from it, but that the numbers for the first few weeks of the Trump administration, actual deportations, is half of what it was under Joe Biden. So they're trying to fool people with this too. As a matter of fact, there was that great story about how they showed this raid. Was it in Colorado where they showed the raid? I forget where it was. But anyway, they showed the raid, making it seem like it was happening right now in 2025, when actually it was from like 4 or 5 years ago, or even 10 years ago.
So this is all like Wizard of Oz stuff, smoke and mirrors. And I think what we need to do is to continue to pull back the curtain, and you see the little guy behind with the levers. And that doesn't mean they don't have power, and that doesn't mean they're not going to hurt a lot of people. They already have. But I do think that it's important that we not be fooled, that we not actually believe that there's a great Oz, but actually know that it's a small little man.
Can I tell you something? I really hope you were 100% right, and I agree that my fear, which I don't think you'll buy into, or at least publicly, because you are a hopeful kind of person, unlike some of us, is when you're a disenchanted soul and you finally see the consequences of Trump on you, and ordinarily we'd rise up, I fear that ordinary person is going to say, well, wait a second. The most powerful people in the world were hurt and didn't stand up. Alan Garber at Harvard, all the tech
Zuckerberg,
billionaires,
Jeff
all
Bezos.
These people. And I worry, and I have no evidence to prove I'm right, that trickle-down effect may create the same level of fear that causes inaction. I hope you're wrong. I hope you're right, and I hope I'm wrong. But I just worry that we have been cowed into silence in this country.
And I just want to say that I do think it's important that nobody feels like they do it alone. Not in addition to the groups like the ACLU that I mentioned before that you can join to get safety in numbers, also the churches and the synagogues and the religious institutions are rising up and challenging this. And so there's lots of platforms. If you just think of it as find a platform that feels like community to you.
Reverend Buddy is getting death threats for that incredibly respectful comment she made to Donald Trump the day after he was sworn in as president, just basically saying, show mercy to people in our country who need mercy. It's
Jim, give me liberty or give me death.
Beautifully put. I know you mean it.
That.
Good to see you, Carol Rose.
And just one thing I wanted to say before you leave. Do we have time?
No, but
we
go
don't
ahead.
have time. Okay, we're
Quickly.
just going to talk about the amount of federal money these hospitals get, like Boston Children's Hospital and Mass General Brigham, MGH Brigham, which is having some financial problems. It's like $200, $300, $400 million a year. They're talking big dollars for research. So they're bending knee in terms of their gender care for underage kids or under 19.
Not right now because we sued them.
Carol, we'll see you.
Go
Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Keep
Thank
at
you
it.
very, very much, Carol Rose. We've been talking with Carol Rose, ACLU of Massachusetts Executive Director, and we thank her very much for coming in. Up next, we got something a little different. We're going to try spreading some joy, Jim, and connection with Everyday Boston and their Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge. I'm going to tell you all about that up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
So here are a couple of notes from generous contributors so far this morning. Joan from West Newsbury, I love GBH. It's the best radio station around. A friend in Stoneham, I try to listen to BPR every day. I love Jim and Marjorie. They keep me informed, have me laughing through it all, on and on and on. People are incredibly complimentary about our colleagues here who do spectacular work. And if you want to join them in not only saying something nice, but making a contribution of whatever amount you can afford, you go to 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org.
We have a lot of nice little notes from people who gave earlier. In today, a friend in Stoneham says, I listen to BPR every day. I love Jim and Marjorie, keep me informed and laughing. Joan from West Newbury, excuse me, I love GBH, the best radio station around. Here's one for you, Jim.
Yep.
Jessica from Rowley says, I love Marjorie and all the guests. I have to thank Jim for getting me into politics, government, and all that. I love watching Broadside with Jim Browdy when I was younger and first living on my own. Remember Broadside,
It was about
Jim?
20 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that's when Jessica was younger and living on her own.
Fine. Thank you for
Broadside
that.
was a very apt name for your show.
I have no idea what it meant.
Okay,
the numbers,
no idea what it meant?
Nope, didn't then, don't know.
Some of us do. Okay.
888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. If you're not rolling in dough at the moment, give whatever you can. Give a couple of bucks to be part of what we and our colleagues try to do. And if you're in good financial shape, then give much more than the $10 a month or $120 all at once for this fabulous 12-month subscription to this terrific Babbel, which teaches you other languages. Again, the number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back here tomorrow. Mayor Wu joins us from 11 to 12. We're joined now by Nikki Shults and Stephen Pina of Everyday Boston. Nikki's the executive director. Stephen's a brand ambassador who also does work with the great Exonerate Network. And by the way, we want you to know we've invited Stephen and Sean Ellis, who spent a lot of his life in jail for a crime he did not commit, both of them. Who we've had on the show before, to talk about their experience as wrongly convicted men and their work with the Exonerate Network. That'll happen relatively soon. They're both with us to talk about the work Everyday Boston does connecting people in the city through storytelling and hopefully inspire some of you in the audience to make a card for a stranger that will be distributed later this week as part of their Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge. For more info, go to their website, everydayboston.org. Nikki and Stephen, it's great to have you here. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you both for coming in. So, Nikki, let's start with you. Explain this, what you guys are doing there, Everyday Boston, and the Love Your Wicked Neighbor, your Wicked Awesome Neighbor, challenge. What is it?
The awesome's important.
That's
we are
right.
Awesome.
That's right. What is it?
So Everyday Boston, we're a nonprofit. Our mission is to bridge racial, social, economic divides through the sharing of life stories. And the Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge is a window into all of that work that we do. So what we've been doing for the last few months is connecting with community partners and individuals to write cards. For strangers, for neighbors, they can be something simple like an encouraging message, artwork, poetry. We've seen some jokes. And we have 99 partners, which include schools, universities, prisons, nonprofit organizations, corporate workplaces, a dance academy, all across the city. And we had a goal to make 5,000 cards, and we are at 11,000.
Wow.
So people are really resonating with kindness.
We're going to have 11,002 in a minute. Before we get to Stephen in this conversation, and I want to talk more, obviously, about the challenge, step back. What does Everyday Boston do when they're not doing this challenge? What's your work year-round?
So our work is really around connecting people. Right now, we are in the middle of a loneliness epidemic, and if you've heard of Bob Waldinger's study over in Harvard, they found that the best predictor of good health and well-being and later in life is all about the quality of your relationships.
Yeah.
So what we do is we teach people the listening and communication skills that they need to connect with other people, and then we offer opportunities to do just that, to talk to strangers, to interview someone you don't know, to come up and have a conversation with someone that is probably different than you, has different ideas, and maybe you have some image in your head of who this person is, and we just surprise each other. We have more in common than we think.
What we discussed when Vivek Murthy, then Surgeon General, came out with his piece about loneliness, not just the pain it causes individual, but the real world impacts on your heart, on the length of your life, on depression. It's just, so brand ambassador, what does that mean there, Stephen, Pina?
Well, for me,
by the way, I've wanted to meet you for a long time. For whatever it's worth,
man,
I'm really glad you're here.
I wanted to meet you. This is a great day for me. For me, brand ambassador is just doing what I do, man. Just meeting people and talking about Everyday Boston and letting people know what it represents, how important it is for the city, for the state, for America, like especially what we're going through now. And I often say I haven't met a camera or a mic that I don't like. And Everyday Boston gives me a chance to just talk to people, just, randomly. I could be in a place like this and look over at somebody and an Everyday Boston question will come up and I'll be like, excuse me, I'm with Everyday Boston. Can I ask you a question?
Do people crave that? I mean, when you do make that kind of outreach, do you find that people, even if they're not conscious of wanting it, do want the connection that you and your colleagues try to bring to them?
I think sometimes, like you said, they don't know that they want it until it happens. Mm-hmm. Like once, you ask somebody a question. We have a question that me and Kari came up with. Tell me something somebody wouldn't know about you just by looking at you. Mm-hmm. And that question, when you ask it, you see their faces and they're like, because so many things are coming up. Mm-hmm. But once they get started, and it's great.
By the way, Kara, who you mentioned, is Kara Solomon, who's the founder of the group, is just spectacular, I should say.
So,
go ahead, Morgan.
So I was just going to say, so you got a bunch of cards there. I mean, what is on them? I mean, is say something nice about your wicked, awesome neighbor, or are you just supposed to say something nice about somebody, that you know at work or school? What's the deal?
So these will be handed out on Valentine's Day. Out to strangers. So you just write an encouraging message.
What do you mean? You're going to sit somewhere and hand them out to strangers?
Yeah, so we're meeting on the Common at the Embrace statue and the Roxbury Public Library and at the local hand in Ashmont. Anyone that wants to help pass out cards can come show up. We'll give you a stack of cards and you'll go out in the city. You'll give it to people riding the T with you, your bus driver, the person cashing you out or buying groceries with you. Anyone that you come across during the day, just to have a little surprise and whimsy and kindness in the day.
Okay, and what is the thing it says on them? What's the question?
Well, this one is, someone did this one, her name was Samantha, and it just says, you're braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. So last year,
I like that.
Last year I went to City Hall and I handed out cards to all the city councilors, all their staff, HR. And, you know, when you get this, you know, you may have a bad day and you get a card like this, you never know what someone's going through. And when they get these cards, it just to see them smile after reading it is a great thing. We have to, especially at this time, we have to be able to spread kindness and love and let people know, like, hey, you do matter. You're important.
We got to take a break.
We're going to take a break. We're talking with Nikki Shults and Stephen Pina of Everyday Boston. We're going to take a quick pledge break and then find out more about Everyday Boston and their effort this Valentine's Day as part of their Love Your Wicked Awesome Neighbor Challenge. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Live, local, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, Boston Public Radio. It's here on GBH Radio because of your support. Now's your chance to keep the conversation going. Give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
So David from Westboro said he was guilty from years of not donating and listening nonstop. I guess he stepped up to the bar today, Jim, and he donated because he wrote us a nice listener comment. A free press, says David, is essential to our democracy. Thank you, David, very much. And then we have Fred in Grafton who says we need GBH more than ever now in this political environment. And that's true because there's a threat to us from Elon Musk and the federal government, so we have to be aware of that. Anyway, we get most of our budget from you guys, generous listeners who are willing to donate because we are on 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Jim and I are only on 15 hours, but the whole station runs round the clock. And it's very important if you do listen to this station, you listen to National Public Radio, and you like what you hear, that you help us out because we depend on you for that help. And right now we have this great little gift, this Babbel language app, which enables you to learn different languages. There's 14 different languages that you can learn. I tried to learn French and Italian. I didn't get very far with the Italian, but at least I got the few basic words so I could communicate, you know, when I did go over, had a chance to go overseas. Anyway, the number is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
That is right, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. The gift is wonderful today, as I've said 100 times. And if you can afford $10 a month or $120 at once, become more a citizen of the world. I know you're not supposed to say that anymore. If you can actually speak someone else's language, it's sort of respectful, just like so many people around the world speak ours. And if you buy into that, here's the deal, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Continuing our conversation with Nikki Shults and Stephen Pina of Everyday Boston.
You know, Stephen, I was wondering, you know, you were exonerated because there was a lack of evidence for a trial, but you served a good chunk of time in prison. And I was thinking about people that do serve time in prison when they're apart from their families and their loved ones and their children. Loneliness is going to be a big issue, I would think, for some of the men and women who are incarcerated.
It is, and that translates to outside as well, because, you know, there's people that everyone is in some type of prison, even on the outside. And, you know, people wake up from, you know, depression, and I just think that Everyday Boston is organization that wants to make sure that these people have a smile and not to feel so lonely on this particular day.
Yeah.
You're a better person than I, that is for sure. Let me just tell you, you really are. You know, I have to tell the truth here, Nikki. When I first met Kara, I didn't believe in any of this crap, I have to say. This connecting thing, write a card, I mean, really? And then she showed me these videos of people telling stories to other people, and the connecting thing actually happened. I believe this is your 7th annual thing, right?
Yes,
this is okay.
7th.
So what's been the concrete product that you think has come out of the first 6 that merits people doing it for the 7th? What have you achieved in the first 6 rounds of this?
I mean, as the first 6 is, so this year we really blew it up. The first 6 years we distributed about 1,000 cards, and we had the same partners and individuals coming back year after year. And I think, you know, what it is that resonates people is, I mean, think about all the conversations we've had this morning. They've all been so negative. Like the world is falling apart around us.
Nobody's better at negative talk than Marjorie and me. Let me just say it right here, my friend.
I know, and now for something different, right?
Exactly.
And I think we all need a little bit of happiness and joy to get through these really hard times.
And does it work? I mean, when someone gives a card to a stranger, and the card is something hopeful from another stranger, how do they react? I mean, what's your experience been? Well, Stephen, you're doing it. Tell us.
I would ask you to think about what it would be like for you and Marjorie to have someone just walk up to you and give you a card that says, "Spread love, it's the Back Bay way."
I'm a fairly cynical person, and I would love that, actually.
Right. So,
I really would.
And then you say, okay, if I would feel that way, how do I translate that out to, some of our community partners are recovery centers. Yeah. And, for someone that's in recovery to wake up on this particular day and have this card given to them, they're struggling every day. And to let someone to get a card that says shine on, or you matter, or you make a difference. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That can go a long way,
And you said this day you're talking about Valentine's Day. Yeah, where a lot of people don't have anybody that's going to be giving them a card.
They don't.
Yeah, exactly. So people can volunteer to join you, right?
Yes, they can.
How do they do that?
By going to following us on Instagram, checking out the QR code that's on the card.
Okay.
Contacting Nikki or myself through the DMing us on the social media.
And then on Valentine's Day itself, so this Friday. This Friday, February 14th, come meet us at 12 p.m. We'll be at the Embrace statue on Boston Common. We'll be at the Roxbury Public Library. And we'll be at the Local Hand in Ashmont. It's a small boutique company. And we'll have stacks of cards and grab a handful and just go out and have an excuse to have a pleasant exchange with the neighbor. I mean,
so tell me some stories. You must have heard some stories of people's reactions to getting these cards over the 7 years. Like what?
One story I was told the other day was there was a school, I want to say it was New Mission High School, and they went out to a CVS, I think, sorry if the details are wrong, but they put the cards on people's windshields. And when you get out, you see something on your windshield, you're probably like, oh, who's putting stuff on here, who's trying to sell me something? And then you pick it up and you read it. And so all the kids are just kind of watching on the sidelines, seeing people kind of grumpy and prickly, like most Bostonians are, pick it up and then turn into a smile and just feel like you had something nice happen.
That's a neat idea.
So we're going to get to fill out a damn card or what? I mean, you're going to give us one each to fill out for somebody else?
Yeah, we've got a few on the studio audience. Look, they're all holding them up. Everyone here is going to make a card.
Goodness.
And I just want to ask everyone that's in the audience to please fill out a card, even if you just put one word on it, something that you may want to hear from someone. You know what I'm saying? It will put I guarantee that it will put a smile on someone's face.
Nikki, I probably raised this with Kara years ago, and she probably told me it was a ridiculous idea, and so I'll try it again.
Try again.
With you. We talk about the fact that even at your workplace, if you say hello to somebody and they say, hi, I'm Jane, I'm Jim, and the second time you see them, I'm Jane again, and then you forget it's Jane, and you're too embarrassed to ask what their name, you know what I mean? And saying, hello, Stephen, rather than hi, is a much more intimate, personal kind of thing. How about name tags? I'm totally serious about this. How about name tag? There's been some projects called Name Tag Project, etc., that people wear so that maybe just their first name, if they're too nervous to have both names because they're afraid. What do you think of that as a notion to allow more intimacy between people who may not feel it?
That's funny because if I'm at a conference or something during the day that has name tags and if I forget to take it off my shirt, inevitably someone's gonna walk up to me and be like, "Oh, hi, Nikki,"
exactly.
and it takes me a minute to wait, do I know them?
Yeah. Although I don't know, I think
people respond to it.
I think they have to be on your forehead otherwise, because otherwise you're looking in the middle of somebody, top of somebody's chest, looking to see their name tag.
Okay, we can work out the details
right in the
of this
forehead.
thing.
Maybe we just tattoo it right in there.
So Nikki was not wildly enthusiastic. What do you think of that idea, Stephen? Be nice.
I think it would be cool. I mean, I've gone to places and seen someone working and say their name and they're thrown off, and then they'll realize that they have a name tag on. I know for me, I forget names.
Me too.
Me too.
I remember faces
Me
better than I
too.
remember names.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a great idea. And I think when I go out on Valentine's Day, I may put a sticker here that
I love
says
that.
Steve.
So I asked Nikki to tell me a story. You got a story or two for me?
I got a million stories. But
Okay.
no, I've given cards and gotten hugs from people.
Oh my
And I like to say that I give great hugs. So, when I'm a hugger, so when, you give a card to someone and they read it and they look at you, and sometimes you can just see that a person needs more than just a card. And for me, it's, come on, bring it in. And just give them a hug, And just the stories of just seeing people smile.
Yeah.
I want to say, too, that I want to give a shout out to a lot of our community partners, nonprofit organizations, Yard Time, Life After Prison, Not On My Watch mentoring, that took part in doing these cards.
So you probably, how many cards
And
you
the
say?
Exoneree Network.
The Exoneree Network, which
Yes,
is a great
yes,
organization.
yes.
So you said 11,000 cards? Is that what
11,000. Our
Wow.
goal was 5,000, and we thought, this is going to be a stretch. This is a lot more than last year, which was 1,000. And then it was like a few days in, and we've already had pledges of people that was over 5,000.
Wow.
Maybe we'll
Did everybody
order
here? Did
10,000.
everybody here get one to do?
I think everyone that wanted one got one.
tables, but I don't see anyone writing really. I see everybody in their laptop.
Please,
So
they're
I
listening to you.
appreciate
They're
if-
wrapped.
It's
if
a
you
pretty
just put it
beautiful
down,
idea.
take a eyes off the laptop for a second and just write, smile or love you or hey y'all, something like that.
Yeah. No, I think that makes it, that's why I like to read these comments. People send in nice
It's a
comments.
variation on a theme, by the way. It really is.
The
That's
text,
exactly right.
not so much. Get a lot of rough ones on the text, but the comments where people have to put their name or they have to write them down and tell somebody, they are very nice, and it does make you feel good, doesn't it?
Well, we have two logos, and one is, a couple. What's your story?
Oh.
And then we have a neighbor is a stranger you haven't met yet.
I like that.
And stereotypes divide us and stories connect us. So where I live at, I'm not going to name where I live at, but the neighbors aren't friendly.
Really?
No. So I went to the management and I says, hey, I work with Everyday Boston. Would you be interested in having us come in and set up a conversation station? And they did. And the neighbors came down, and a few of the neighbors have lived there for 2 years and really got to didn't know who they, and they said, can we do this every month? And I'm like, hey man, talk to management.
That's neat.
Yeah.
And
You're
they came
doing
down
wonderful
and-
work, you guys.
Yeah, they mixed and mingled.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
Everyday Boston, we'll give the website in a minute. Please fill out the cards, give them back to them. Good luck with the work. Come back and see us after this challenge, too, and we'll
We'd
talk
love to.
more. And you and Sean, say hi to Sean.
I will.
We're going to see you both soon.
And as Stephen just said, you can volunteer by going to the card. It says in the back, right? You got Instagram on there. You just got the little cute, whatchamacallit?
Just go to Everyday Boston on Instagram and TikTok. And
Okay.
Great.
We've been speaking with Nikki Shults and Stephen Pina of Everyday Boston. Nikki is the executive director. Stephen is a brand ambassador who also does work with the Exoneree Network. And their website, again, everydayboston.org. Thank you very much for coming in, and thank you for that great idea. Okay, after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by CNN's John King. He's going to zoom in on the latest out of D.C. from the GOP totally failing to protest any of what's going on down there, and a push to, a snag possibly in the release of more hostages by Hamas. He's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The GBH Winter Membership Drive is ending tomorrow, and your contribution now is essential to keep Boston Public Radio and all the programs you value on the air and available to all. If you can give, please do so now by giving online at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424. I'm Melissa Jones, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Liz Lavoie.
All right, 13 more people to give in the next 4 minutes. That's what's needed to stay on track right now. Please contribute what you can to help pay for the news and the information you can always trust and rely on All gifts are welcome at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
We want to give a big thank you to Judith and Quincy, who gave and made a comment. I listen to Marjorie and Jim every day and want that to continue. Thank you, Judith. Your gift right now is helping to ensure that's going to happen. Join with Judith and so many others like you who love Boston Public Radio and everything we do here for you at GBH News by giving now. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And when you join our friend in Carver and make your gift of support at $10 a month, we would love to send you a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. You can study one language or multiple languages. Your subscription provides access to 14 total languages that Babbel offers. The program actually prepares you to speak the language and carry on conversation, so you can really learn on your own time, anywhere, anytime. Sign up as a sustaining member to GBH at $10 a month and ask for that 12-month subscription to Babbel. You can also give $120 all at once. The deadline's coming up at 7 p.m. tonight, but you're listening now, so make your gift at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
It's the next to last day of our winter membership drive. You've probably been meaning to give. Maybe you even had your hand on the phone or on your wallet, and then there was a distraction. I get it. It happens, right? Well, the time to give is almost gone. Please take a couple of moments right now. You're listening now. Do it now. Support your listening in the months ahead with that gift. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
You listen to Boston Public Radio because it helps keep you informed on what is happening in our neighborhoods in Boston and across the state. As you just heard, stories connect us. Jim and Marjorie ask the questions you want answered by the people who make changes that affect your day-to-day life and connect us together. That's why we're asking for your gift now at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424.
Trusted news sources are more crucial than ever. NPR and GBH stand as beacons of truth and reliability. But to continue providing you the accurate and unbiased news, we're looking for your financial support. 5 more people in just the next couple of minutes keeps us on track for this membership drive that will be ending tomorrow. Be a part of the work that we do here at GBH by making it possible. 5 more people in just the next couple of minutes. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424. And thank you so much for your...
Support for GBH comes from you and the Boston Philharmonic with conductor Benjamin Zander, performing Strauss's 4 Last Songs and Mahler's 4th Symphony with soprano Claire Booth at Symphony Hall, Boston, February 16th at 3. Tickets at bostonphil.org. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. It's another Tuesday check-in with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. John spent a whole year talking with Americans around the country about the election, so maybe he can explain why 53% of the country is so enthusiastic about the way Donald Trump is dismantling the federal government.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we end with you. Cultural authorities over at the New York Times are heralding the return of milk to the mainstream. And it's not just RFK Jr. with his loony raw milk obsession, though that's part of it. It's also actress Nicole Kidman drinking milk erotically in her movie Baby Girl, and it's Gen Z influencers on TikTok learning there's more to milk than oats and soy. Some, though, remain less convinced. We'll open the phone and text lines for your milk musings. That's ahead. Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump is hosting Jordan's King Abdullah II at the White House today. They're currently addressing reporters. Their meeting taking place against the backdrop of a fragile ceasefire and hostages for prisoners agreement between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. President Trump is raising tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports on how the levy will hit U.S. importers.
American importers will now be paying a 25% tax on steel and aluminum, and that makes these tariffs a lot like some you might remember him imposing during his first term, except this time the aluminum rate is higher. It was 10% back then. In doing this, the administration has stressed they're trying to use these tariffs to stick it to China, which is the world's biggest steel exporter. Now, the U.S. doesn't actually get much steel or aluminum directly from China, but the White House argues that Chinese steel makes it into the U.S. by being sold through other countries.
NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reporting. A federal judge has paused immediate cuts that the Trump administration ordered for the National Institutes of Health. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports cancer researchers and patients were concerned about the effects of the cuts on medical research.
The funding cuts would have affected the funds that institutions like universities and cancer centers receive to cover the cost of providing laboratories, equipment, and data security, for example. Last week, the NIH sought to cut that funding by about 75% at many institutions. That prompted chaos in the research community and concern that clinical trials and various supports for cancer patients would have to stop in order to meet the sudden change. Proponents of the cut say the funding rates for overhead costs of research are too high and that private donors should step in. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
Differences in countries' stances on artificial intelligence have emerged during a two-day AI summit in Paris. Global leaders, tech industry chiefs, and policymakers are attending. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the gathering and warned against excessive regulation.
Vance targeted both rival China and European allies. He warned against striking artificial intelligence deals with authoritarian regimes and called it most troubling when U.S. big tech companies are hindered by erroneous international rules. He was referring to EU laws policing social media platforms for hate speech and misinformation. AI's potential dangers have loomed over the summit. 61 countries signed a final declaration committing to the development of an open, inclusive, and ethical AI. The U.S. and U.K. did not sign. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Nasdaq is down 89 points, or nearly 0.5%. The Dow is down 15 points, and the S&P's off 12. From Washington, this is NPR News.
And from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston, I'm Judy Ewell. Employees at Massachusetts General Brigham are waiting to hear if they will survive layoffs, as others wonder if those cutbacks could impact patient care. The hospital's CEO informed workers of impending layoffs yesterday. Hundreds of people in management and administrative positions could lose their jobs starting this week. Boston University School of Public Health professor David Rosenblum says while doctors and nurses are not targeted for layoffs, a reduction in staffing levels may cause burnout for others.
All of these cuts are going to hurt people. They're going to make believe that these are cuts to institutions, that they're cutting out fraud and abuse, of which there's plenty. But these cuts are going to hurt people, and they're going to hurt us fast.
MGB says the largest number of layoffs in the hospital's history are necessary as the facility faces an anticipated $250 million shortfall over the next 2 years. The state Supreme Judicial Court today rejected a motion from the defense to drop 2 charges against Karen Reed. She's accused of fatally striking her boyfriend with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. Defense attorneys claim several jurors told them after the judge declared a mistrial that they found Reed not guilty on charges of second-degree murder and leaving the scene of an accident, so trying her on those counts again amounts to double jeopardy. Justices disagreed, saying in their decision that post-trial accounts of jury deliberations do not constitute an acquittal. Reed faces a second trial in April. A chilly Tuesday, clouding up outside, mostly cloudy tonight, lows in the teens. Cloudy again tomorrow, highs in the 30s. Right now, it's overcast, 30 degrees in Boston. This is GBH.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Indiana University, establishing the IU Launch Accelerator for Biosciences to drive healthcare discoveries and train the next generation of innovators. More at go.iu.edu/IULab.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to say again that we're going to be back here tomorrow. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, just weeks after having her third baby, is coming in for another edition of Ask the Mayor, taking our questions and yours. She'll be here from 11 to noon. Hello again, Jim.
Hi, we're going to introduce John King in a second, but on CNN right now, Donald Trump is meeting with King Abdullah of Jordan. Here's Trump's quote. "We wouldn't have to buy Gaza. We would own it. Nobody would question it." I mean, it's just, we're like in an alternative universe.
Yeah.
In the same universe as us, we hope, is CNN's chief national correspondent who's joining us on Zoom. That'd be John King. Hi there, John.
Hello there. Actually in my office in Washington, D.C. for a change, not on the road today. And you can see over my shoulder, if you're watching on Zoom, is the remarks the president is making in the Oval Office. And again, you're left... Secretary of State Marco Rubio is sitting there trying to just keep his lips straight, and no one would question it. The whole world is questioning it. It's not our land. It belongs to somebody else under international law. The head of state sitting next to the President of the United States already has a problem with Palestinian refugees, and the President has said he might cut off aid to Jordan and to Egypt if they just don't take the Palestinians off their own land, so that the United States could take it over, and we wouldn't have to pay for it and nobody would question it, says the President of the United States. Again, here we are in week 3. Everybody is questioning it, and doesn't belong to the United States, but at the same time, as absurd and outside of the norms and outside of the lines as it sounds, if you're in our business or if you're a global leader, you got to figure out what does he really mean and where is he going with this?
Well, one of the things I'm confused about, we did have hostages released by Hamas, emaciated hostages, which really was heart-wrenching to watch. But there's still more hostages. So does this help? Hamas is kind of ticked off right now. Does this help or hurt the effort to get the hostages back?
It's a great question. There was a hostage release, just a couple days ago in the middle of all of this. So on the one hand, you could say at least Hamas and Israel seem to be staying on the track. However, the president said just yesterday, I believe it was just yesterday, that if all of the hostages aren't released by Saturday, then the deal should be blown up and all hell should break loose.
Right.
And Netanyahu's government is now saying it expects more hostages released on Saturday. So I do think we're heading into a weekend where this very fragile ceasefire and hostage release and prisoner release exchange negotiated that has held together so far for a couple of weeks. I think this weekend is going to be a crossroads moment for it. And again, when something is so fragile, adding more uncertainty to it, your instincts would tell you it doesn't help. But that's the wonder of the world and the mystery of the world we now live in, both from a foreign policy standpoint and from a reporting standpoint, is he trying to blow it up? Is he trying to help his friend Benjamin Netanyahu and blow up this whole thing? It's an interesting political moment in Israel because you have, the families of the hostages who have yet to be released, or at least yet to know definitively are they still alive or are they dead. They want this to succeed, just in those narrow bounds of can we please have some closure or can we have our loved one back? They would like it to continue. So again, more turmoil as we head. I think that this weekend will be a big question mark for whether that already fragile agreement holds.
John King, I really love the fact that you went around the country interviewing people about what they thought about politics. I think there's too much talking heads and pundits and people who've never really interviewed anybody in their living room giving us opinions on television. So I loved it. And that's why I was anxious to talk to you today. We talked yesterday, Jim and I, about how more than half, 53% of Americans, at least in the CBS poll, are fine with what's gone on the last few weeks. And
they're better than fine. They approve of the job the president
and
Trump
other people,
is doing.
are basket cases over what's gone on in the last few weeks, particularly with Elon Musk. So, what's your sense? You talked to dozens and dozens of people, and a lot of them were big supporters of President Trump, of what they're happy about.
And we've been keeping in touch with them, through text and through emails as we go through this. And I'll be back out on the road again in a couple of days to keep exploring these questions. But here's what I would say. When a good slice of America everyone who voted for President Trump, everyone who voted for President Trump, and even a lot of other people who didn't vote for President Trump because they can't stand him personally or they don't like other things about him, think that this town is bloated, broken, and non-responsive to their concerns. That it is not, that Washington is not designed to help whatever the daily problem in your life is out there. So they think this town is broken. So they are going to support, for now anyway, taking it by the ankle and shaking it, if you will, turning it upside down and shaking it. Now, that does not mean that if funding for vital medical research gets cut off, if there's a story about foreign aid that shows some devastatingly horrible thing happening in some foreign country, that if government agencies are unable to function because people are laid off or there's just so much confusion or money doesn't get allocated. So I would put it this way. Trump voters especially, and a decent slice of America, thinks this town needs to be shaken and disrupted and changed. And they're willing to even let him do things that they don't agree with to start to achieve that goal. I think the test is going to be if people start paying a personal price for it.
Yeah.
If either because of inflation, because of chaotic policies, or money lost in their community, or jobs lost in their community, or God forbid, lives lost in their circles or in their community because of this. We're not there yet. We're 3 weeks into this. A lot of what, and again, part of the challenge for our business is he says so many things, and they say they're doing so many things. We have to find out what's actually happening. And at the moment, we have a potential, it's a huge issue, a potential constitutional crisis because some of what they have promised to do has been stopped by the courts.
Right.
In a number of different cases about a number of different issues in a number of federal district court levels all around the country. And that's going to make its way up through the appellate court and ultimately to the Supreme Court. And what you have here is a giant test of presidential power. There is no question, Jim and Marjorie, no question that some of the things they are doing, some of the things Elon Musk is doing, some of the things that agencies are doing violate the law. They are contrary to laws passed by Congress. There's no question about that. The question is, do the courts say, yeah, but the Congress was infringing on a president's power and try to either swing it back to the president or split the difference. And the Trump people know this. Some of them are just all for chaos, but some of them think if we have 100 of these cases and we win 10 or 15 of them, then we will have advanced our cause because we will have either cut the government or cut a program or shut down an agency and reestablished that, whatever that is, as a prerogative of the president and presidential power. So they don't expect to win them all, but they are challenging judges. When you have the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States, and now their friends in Congress saying the courts have no right, the judicial branch has no right to oversee the executive branch, that's a dangerous proposition. We're going to have to watch where this goes.
You were mentioning a minute ago, and I was watching CNN while you were talking, John, over Marjorie's shoulder, how uncomfortable Secretary of State Rubio seemed during this meeting. I would say he looked like a hostage himself. And then CNN listed quotes from 4 Republican leaders in the Senate who sound like hostages of Donald Trump when one of your reporters asked them if they were okay with not obeying a judge's ruling. I mean, I want to get to GOP fear in a minute, but I want to stay on your all-over-the-map reporting. Well, responsible journalists like you say what you said a minute ago. We have to distinguish between what's real with Trump and what's just Trump bloviation, my word, not yours, with a couple of exceptions. Because you interviewed this woman, G, which obviously is not the real name, a Honduran asylum seeker in Lincoln, Nebraska. And even though we know that mass deportation, as promised, is not happening, you brought to us somebody who feels the fear, whether it's real or just threatened. Just listen to this brief part of a conversation that John King, again, in Lincoln, Nebraska, had with this person who's worried about her status now that Trump is talking deportation.
Because he tries to implement quite strict policies with immigrants in general, and I think even more with people who have just entered the country. At least with the program I entered with, there is some instability, so to speak. So of course, that increases anxiety and concern.
Más que todo con la llegada de Trump.
With Trump's arrival, I have felt very unstable. I have a lot of anxiety, I suffer from insomnia, and I cannot stop thinking about the possibility of being deported.
And if you were to say to G, John, which you may have, well, then he's not doing mass deportation as threatened, I assume that's little comfort, if any, to somebody who lives in fear, no?
There's a great deal of fear in the immigrant community. And again, in her case, number one, she was a journalist, so she's a colleague, right?
Right,
she
I
was
forgot.
Back in Honduras, who did reports about government corruption and the government of Honduras occasionally in collusion with violent gangs to get at its critics. And so she finally felt for her life she had to leave the country. She said she stayed for a long time, but she was beaten, she says, and she finally had to leave the country. Now, here's the issue. She came in under the Customs and Border Patrol app that Trump killed on day one. It was a Biden administration initiative. She's in the asylum process. She believes she has a strong claim, but the Trump people have said that they question all the stuff Biden did. So it's a fundamental question, again, that's going to be settled in the courts. The United States government under President Biden gave her its word. You can come into the country, make your case. If you succeed, you get asylum. If you don't get asylum, you go home, right? That's the way it works, right? But it's a process. She actually followed the process. There's a lot of talk. Trump has on strong political ground when he talks about people illegally crossing the border and people just coming in. He has a good political standing on that issue. She followed the process the way it was supposed to be done. But the Trump administration have questioned Biden's policies and said they want to take it away. They haven't gotten to her particular case yet, but they have in the case of some Venezuelans said, we don't care what Biden told them. We're going to go back against this. So that's the fear she lives in. And again, the United States government gave her its word, if you will, that she followed the process. And now she's about to pay taxes for the first time. How about that as an irony? She's working in a mail sorting facility while she's waiting for her asylum claim to be heard. She's about to pay taxes to the United States government for the first time. And she's afraid that if she's stopped at a red light somewhere, she might get thrown out of the country. So no, the mass deportations have not happened yet. And you see the Trump people actually criticizing their own agencies for not doing more of this. And Tom Homan, the president's czar today, essentially told the Pope to shut up. Pope Francis said he thought this was harsh and terrible. And Tom Homan said he should stick to the Catholic Church. So you asked me at the beginning, like, why do people out there still support certain things? I do think the attitude and the tone the Trump people take about this, I think they have pretty broad political support to have a crackdown on illegal immigration. I think if they start telling the Pope to shut up and things like that, they do run the risk of people saying, what is this about? Is this about power? Is this about ego? Is this about, just you and your power? Or is it actually about a policy?
Well, the Catholic Church, which has been disgraceful on a lot of things, has been pretty good on immigration. It's not just the Pope, it's the bishops. And I love the National Catholic Reporter, which took J.D. Vance to task, claiming he's a very, very holy, very devout Catholic. And he said, well, you can't think this way about immigration and cracking down on people. You're supposed to love the stranger, J.D. Vance. So I love that they took him to task. That was pretty good. Anyway, we're talking with John King, CNN's chief national correspondent. We're going to keep talking to him after this quick break. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It's time to support Boston Public Radio on GBH. Listener contributions pay for the program and keep it on the air. You don't have to give much to make a difference. Please make a difference by giving now at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
So Stacy in Greene, Rhode Island touched every base. I homeschool and my kids listen to Jim and Marjorie with me almost every day.
Oh.
Leads to great conversations. And now, Stacy says, with Babbel, we can learn a foreign language together. That's pretty good. Here is Nancy in Concord. Longtime sustainer, wanted to support with an additional donation at this fraught time. Thank you for all you're doing. Every one of these notes, I wish we could read every one of them, is so decent and thoughtful and kind to not just us, but all the people we work with. And as I've said to you repeatedly, I can't tell you how much it matters to us that you take the time to give and you take the time to write a note saying what the work of our colleagues, and to some degree us, means to you. So if you feel like those people do, here's an opportunity to show it by making a contribution, whatever amount you can afford, at 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org.
Yeah, and as we mentioned all day, we have this Babbel deal. This is a language learning app. You can use it on any of your devices, your phone, your tablet, your desktop, and it helps you learn. You get to choose among 14 languages, and if you just want to learn another language to exercise your brain, or if you're going a trip to a foreign country, it's great. It helps you with the basic understanding of the language. It helps you get around that country when people don't speak English. wish. So the number again is 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. I want to read one more, Jim. This is from, or two more actually. This is from Marcia in Houston Lake, is it Montana? No, Missouri.
Yep.
That's right, because she's near Kansas City, which of course is in Missouri. She says, I'm near Kansas City, have been listening to Marjorie and Jim for 8 years now, kept me sane, but more importantly, they've kept me educated on the facts. And here is a friend from Grafton who says, accurate news, arts, culture, local issues, national, international coverage. And we do have great arts coverage. I mean, Jared Bowen is one of the only people in Boston who's doing big time art coverage, not just on a weekly basis, but every single day.
Oh, it's incredible.
Right after us at 2 o'clock, what's going on
yeah.
in the arts, what's going on in movies, what's going on, museums, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a really great thing, too. So the number again, if you want to donate, because we only do this a few times a year because we are supported mainly by donations from people who listen. If you want to become one of them, or if you want to just give more, we're always happy if you want to give more, 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
I also want to say to Marcia in Houston, Lake Missouri, near Kansas City, really, really sorry about the game on Sunday night. Actually not, but we appreciate your contribution anyway. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu joins us for an hour tomorrow morning in person, 11 to 12 at the library. We continue our conversation with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King.
So, John, one last thing for me anyway about the politics right now. It does seem as though the Republicans are just in total lockstep. We'll see if Mitch McConnell, a polio survivor, votes against RFK Jr., but it doesn't seem like he's going to be prevented, even though, when your own cousins and your own brothers and sisters are saying you're a nut, it's probably not a good idea.
Predator is the word that
Caroline Kennedy called him a
used.
predator, but his brothers and sisters basically said he was, a little bit unhinged, that he wouldn't be the guy for the job. And Tulsi Gabbard, people have questioned her relationships with the former head of Syria, and Putin, et cetera. But they seem to be fine, even with Elon Musk and DOGE. So that's, I guess, where we're headed. There's going to be maybe a peep here and there, but that's it.
Well put. Well put.
Okay.
I have almost nothing to add to that, in the sense that if you're looking for, if you are a Republican out there who does not like what Donald Trump is doing to your party, whether it's in policy or its personnel, and you're looking to Washington for some voice to stand up against him, I would say you're looking to the wrong place. You're right. I think Senator McConnell is likely to be a lonely voice, especially on foreign policy, because he's a Reagan Republican. He believes America should, lead alliances and stand up for principle and stand up for democracy around the world, and he does not see that in the Trump team. He has profound disagreements with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about vaccines and about public health. But I think when you see Susan Collins getting on board and some others getting on board who you thought, Dr. Cassidy, Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, who have profound questions and profound disagreements, it just tells you everything about the fealty to Donald Trump in the party right now. Senator Cassidy and Senator Collins happen to be, should they decide to seek re-election, on the next midterm ballot. They say this has nothing to do with that. I'll leave that to you folks at home. To decide whether you think maybe, the risk of a primary, the fear of a primary, the fear of a constant, mega ecosystem banging at your door and ringing your phones has anything to do with it. But look, the Trump takeover of the Republican Party is complete. For anyone who thinks that there's still a little sliver of hope that somebody's going to muster some opposition, it's not going to happen. Now, that does not mean when we talk about all these executive orders, we talk about Elon Musk going into the agencies and doing things, whether he has the authority or not. Wait to see, can they pass legislation? Right? They are hung up now over can they do the Trump tax cuts? Can they do some of the other policy he wants? But at the same time, reducing spending and reducing the deficit. That math is hard, ladies and gentlemen. It's near impossible. If you're going to cut taxes by a huge amount of money and take away government revenues, and you still say you're going to balance the budget, which Donald Trump did not care about in his first term.
No.
Just did not care about in his first term. And in his defense, the pandemic then caused a lot of spending as well. But Donald Trump was not a conservative in his first term. He says he will be from a budget perspective now. But can his party, with these narrow majorities who are going to apparently rubber stamp all of his nominees, can they actually pass legislation? That, to me, is a huge question. And the Republican deadline for advancing the budget keeps moving. It keeps moving because they can't get an agreement.
You know, it seems to me that Trump doesn't waste a second doing something that will aggravate somebody. And I have to say, we talked earlier today about the Justice Department ordering the dismissal of charges against Eric Adams because criminal charges are distracting from you helping the president deport people, and you can't run for re-election when you have to worry about these nasty prosecutions for corruption and bribery. The story we didn't talk about is him pardoning the former governor of Illinois, Rod Blagojevich, who is on tape, offering for sale the seat where he made the appointment to the successor to Barack Obama's Senate seat. And before I get your thought about what motivated this, he said he's a fine guy. CNN last night on Anderson Cooper played a great interview that Cooper did a few years ago with former Illinois Governor Blagojevich. Blagojevich, as you'll hear, calling himself a political prisoner. Here's just a little bit of it.
I am a political prisoner. I was put in prison for practicing.
Wait a minute, you're a political
politics.
prisoner? Nelson Mandela was a political prisoner. Political prisoners have no due process and are unjustly jailed. You had a jury convict you. You had appeals courts look at your sentencing, and you even appealed to the Supreme Court twice, and they refused to hear you. So you're hardly a political prisoner.
That was a fabulous moment. So since everything is transactional in my estimation with Donald Trump, what does he get out of pardoning a guy who is so clearly guilty of a pretty horrible offense, John King?
I think you hit it earlier before you got to the sound there. He annoys, angers, disappoints, alarms, dismays, scares establishment people who believe that we have rules and laws for a reason. And he empowers people like himself and Rod Blagojevich who keep saying things that aren't true, hoping that in time people will just accept them as true, like I'm a political prisoner, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's going to pay for it, or that the 2020 election was rigged by Joe Biden. You just say things and you say them so many times that people just get so numb that they just accept them, or some people actually believe them. Look, the disruption of Donald Trump is everywhere. And to your point about this is whether it's firing the people who run the ethics agencies, whether it's getting rid of the Federal Election Commission has been inept for almost every second I've been in Washington, which is going on 35, 36 years now. But he still does not have, he's firing its chairwoman, taking down ethical barriers, giving Eric Adams a pass, giving now Rod Blagojevich, who he commuted his sentence in his first term, now he pardons him. Now, if you stand for the rule of law, and the system doesn't mean the system doesn't get it wrong sometimes. We don't, all the perfect people raise your hands, but it's an assault. It is an assault on institutions. It is an assault on the way things have always been done. And again, a lot of people think this town is broken. I don't think people think all of the courts are broken. I don't think the people think that the basic bedrocks of America are broken. But even I'm having a hard time articulating this. If you're trying to figure out what is he doing, right? He's throwing so many things up in the air, and there's such a dust storm right now. I think the one thing it all fits under is power. Is power. Is Donald Trump saying, I have power, and I'm going to use it, and I don't care if it ticks you off. I was going to use stronger language, but it's lunchtime. If it ticks you off.
John, before you go, you said things that aren't broken. Let me tell you one thing that is broken. The Kansas City Chiefs streak in the Super Bowl. And I have to say, I'm a little offended. I'm assuming you went to work Monday morning and congratulated your producer on the Eagles' victory. You haven't said a word to me about my victory Sunday night. Anything you want to say before you go?
Jim played amazingly
Number
well.
one, we got right to the substance here, so I was trying to honor the questions. I was trying to be responsive to the questions asked by my two fine friends here.
Yeah.
But I told you last week I thought the Eagles were going to win.
Yeah.
They did win. I think I said 17 points for the Chiefs. They got 22, but they only got them in garbage time. That was a blowout. Yes,
blowout.
Your team.
Thank you.
Enjoy it while you can, because your team was pretty amazing out there.
Thank you.
And I did congratulate my colleague Allie Malloy of Allentown Allie, we call her.
Oh.
Who went home to watch the game with her mom in Allentown and her family, and had a great time. She did not get on any polls. They didn't have to grease the polls for Allie. They had to do that for some other people maybe. But look, that Eagles team looked amazing. I mean, and if you're a Patriots fan like me and you're sitting there saying, what do they need to fix? Look at the offensive line and the defensive line of the team. Taking nothing away, Jalen Hurts had an amazing game. The entire team had an amazing game. One of my Trump voters, Jim, I know I'm rambling here. One of my Trump voters, Chris Mudd in Iowa, he asked me who I was for the morning of the game, and he said, "You just watch. Cooper DeJean is going to be a star because he's an Iowa kid."
Oh.
And then he had that interception, boom. And I said, "Wow, Nostradamus lives in Iowa. Who knew?"
22-year-old kid on his birthday. Tell Allie to call me sometime. We can celebrate together. John, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you,
King,
John.
appreciate it.
Great to see you.
Thank you.
We have been speaking with CNN's chief national correspondent, John King. After a quick break, many of our commenters on YouTube have been asking, where's that white mustache on your upper lip, Jim? Well, apparently Milk is having a moment. We're going to open the phone and text lines. Are you an enthusiastic milk consumer, or does the thought of a tall white glass make you feel queasy? And I never thought of it until today, but the crucial role milk has played in so many of our most popular movies from years ago and currently. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live at the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Think about it. For 3 hours every day, you get to hear thought-provoking conversations on local, national, and international issues for free. It only happens with your support, so please support your Boston Public Radio listening by calling 888-897-9424 or giving online at gbhnews.org.
You know, we've asked a lot of people to make a contribution if you can afford it, and if you were of that mind to do that to a station you obviously listen to because you're listening to me. Some are doing more. Here's Lindy from Marion. Love, capital letters, thank you, Lindy. Jim and Marjorie, such great discussions. I'm increasing my monthly donation, and thanks for them and the great work GBH does with news. You can do that too. If you haven't given, I think it's fair to say it's time to do that. If you have given, you can give a little bit more of whatever amount moves you right now. And you do it by calling 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Tomorrow is the last day of this winter pledge drive. So if you're going to do it, do it. Just sit down right now or stand up or whatever you want to do. Lie down, call the number or go online at gbhnews.org, 888-897-9424. Contribute whatever you can. And as Marjorie will describe to you, if you give $10 a month or $120 all at once, what do they get, Marjorie?
They get this great Babbel language app. It is a way to learn languages on your phone, on your computer, your desktop, your tablet, whatever you got. And it's, as I said before, synced across devices. So if you start working on it on your phone in the morning, you can continue in your afternoon on your Apple Mac or whatever you got. And it'll be right where you left off. You don't lose your place, and that's really a big deal. It's very frustrating to go back to the beginning again. And you can learn one of 14 languages. I tried it before, and it really does work. I mean, didn't get anywhere near fluent, but I got, the basic phrases, and I can understand the basic phrases, and that's what you need if you're traveling overseas and people don't speak English. So that's for $10 a month, and you can get a 1-year ad-free subscription to the language learning app Babbel. 877, that's the wrong number. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
And by the way, I hope you like all of our guests, but there aren't many places, I think there are no places, where tomorrow morning you'll get to hear an hour of Mayor Wu. And if you want to call and ask her a question, you don't have to live in Boston. If you're interested in an issue that's bigger than Boston, what she's going to say when she testifies in front of Congress in March, where they have invited her, you have that opportunity. You can do it with the governor, the attorney general. Soon you're going to be able to do it with the auditor on our show too. I think that's pretty valuable stuff for a democracy that's hanging by a thread. So if you agree with any of that and you like what we do, or you like what our colleagues do, or you respect the people behind the scenes who make all this possible, here's your opportunity at 888-897-9424 or gbhnews.org. For the remainder of the show, we're opening the lines to talk to you about milk, America's milk habits. They're changing. Are you among the increasing number of grown adults, not little kids, turning to a glass of cold dairy milk, I assume, to improve your mood? Or have you made the switch to various nut milks and other alternatives like almond, cashew, oat, rice, pea, hemp, etc.? What's behind this newfound obsession with milk in our country? Is it just that the milk lobby of yore got us hooked early and we can't wean ourselves off this stuff? Or do you find it to be a comfort at a time of great discomfort. You and milk. 877-301-8970. And we also cautiously wade into the raw milk debate with the bird flu on the rise and health experts warning raw milk may be one source of possible transmission. So who is saying you should drink raw milk? The guy who's about to be head of Health and Human Services, the guy with the worm in the brain, RFK Jr. 877-301-8970. One of the reasons we decided to talk about this, Marjorie, is if there was ever an issue on which we were diametrically opposed, it is this. I believe I have not had a glass of milk since I was 10. And
really?
I'm not, well, I mean, I take a sip.
Don't you
and I
put
put
milk in your coffee?
Yeah, that's not a glass of milk. That's a dribble of milk. I've had a dribble of milk. I've not had a glass of milk. Apparently, lots of people, including young men, apparently, are really enamored anew of milk. And of course, there's that scene where, even if you haven't seen it, we were talking to Hannah about this morning, she was describing it to us, the infamous scene at the bar where the, I think, soon-to-be young lover orders a glass of milk or gives a glass of milk or something.
You're talking about the Nicole
Baby
Kidman?
girl, Nicole Kidman.
Oh, yeah. The intern with whom she has an affair, they're at a bar, they're not at different parts of the bar, and he sends over this huge glass of milk as sort of a signal to her whether she's going to accept him or not accept him. And she just gulps down the entire big glass of milk and says, I'm on. And she's got the little thing over her lip. Remember they used to have those commercials? Giselle Bundchen used to do that,
don't they?
with the gut milk thing, and they'd have the little milk mustache. Yeah. But I didn't realize it's not...
Wait, I said I don't... You drink it like crazy, don't you?
Oh, I do. I'm a big milk person.
Now, what is that about?
I've always loved milk. I like whole milk. You know, you can have... They said for a while I should have 2% or 1%, but it's not as rich as the whole milk. And then they said the whole milk wasn't so bad for you. But I'm a big milk... I just love it. I drink warm milk at the end of the day.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I drink a lot of milk. And I remember when I was, you're not supposed to drink too much coffee when you're pregnant, right? So I remember I get started, when I had my kids, I'd have like an inch of coffee in the morning, and then I put like 5 inches of milk and have a little, so I put a lot of milk in my coffee. I love milk. I think it tastes delicious. And if you're going to have cookies, you got to have milk.
Dunking
you're gonna have
a
cake,
cookie is not the same as drinking a glass of milk.
Well, you can't dunk a piece of chocolate cake. You know what I mean?
Oh, yes, you can.
Cake.
I've dunked.
Cake and milk. It's just delicious. But I didn't know that this was such a big deal in the movies. Now I was reminded today, the movie Get Out. Remember the movie Get Out? That was a great Jordan Peele movie.
Yeah.
And they talked about how, it was scary, but it had a great ending. It talks about how Rose, the kind of very bad girl that recruits all these young black men, how she ate her cereal while sipping a separate glass of milk through a straw. That was kind of weird. She had
What do you mean, eating dry cereal and then sipping milk?
I guess that's what she did. I don't remember that from the movie, but they talked about that. They talked about that No Country for Old Men that won a lot of awards. That, how do you say his name? Javier Bardem?
I have no idea.
Yeah, he gulped down a big, huge glass of milk before he started attacking people with some kind of machete.
So what is your point? That as goes the movies, so goes America?
Milk has played a big role in the movies. Remember that back in the day, Clockwork Orange? That was a really scary movie.
Malcolm McDowell.
Yeah, they all drank milk.
That was like 1848, that movie came out.
Yeah, but people still watch it. My kids don't watch it.
They do?
It's very violent. Yeah, but they all drank milk.
What did he do with milk?
They drank a lot of milk before they went out and started sexually assaulting everybody.
Really?
Yes.
Maybe that's what happened to Pete Hegseth. It's a milk drinker.
I don't know, but milk has a big
you,
Mad Max. A lot of milk there.
Okay, I don't care about the movies.
You don't?
I care about real people, ordinary people, who apparently the consumption of milk is on the uptick, Marjorie, and apparently particularly among young men. How do you explain that?
I don't know, but I know a big glass of cold milk or even warm milk at the end of the day doesn't really get better than that, Jim.
Okay.
Marie in the car. What do you think, Marie?
I think it does, actually. Marie in the car. Hi.
So my husband and I are 67 years old.
Yeah.
And nothing makes him happier at night when he comes home from a long day at work. If I could cook a gourmet dinner, but the best thing he likes is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on toast with a huge glass of cold milk.
Oh,
if I have milk in the house, he's like a 12-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think of this guy, Marie? Your husband.
I get the milk just for him because it doesn't do it for me. I don't drink milk anymore. But He loves it.
Well, if it makes him happy, it apparently makes you
know
happy.
Something, though, Marie, and you should double check me to make sure I'm right, but I think I have read where if you have a peanut butter sandwich with a glass of milk, it's a complete protein. You got the protein in the peanut butter.
Where'd you read that? Mad Magazine?
I don't know.
One
of
where'd
those,
you read that?
things.
Exactly.
But it does make a complete protein.
Marie, say hi to the husband. Thank you very much for the call. He said nothing makes him happier. Did you hear that?
Yes, that's
Marie
right.
said nothing
makes him happier than that.
It's rather sad.
Yeah.
John, it's a nice story, but John in Marshfield, hello.
Hey, how are you?
I think we're good.
Well,
how are you?
I'm doing great. But first, we got to distinguish between skim milk and whole milk.
Yeah,
skim milk is
awful.
not milk.
Skim milk is like water.
Awful. It's like
horrible.
gray.
Yeah,
it's horrible.
Like water.
Yeah.
I've taken it to the opposite extreme. Is I drink half and half.
No, you don't.
And strictly half and half.
No, you don't. You drink half and half?
By the cup.
You drink half and half?
Oh, I wish it. Sometimes it's light cream. But, yep, half and half it is.
That's good. Okay, thank you. Apparently it makes him happy, too. Light cream. You ever drunk? You love whipped cream, though. That's heavy cream, right?
I do. I've
So I
had,
guess
I've
that's a
had a few
variation
sips
of
of
thing.
half and half, I must admit.
Do you know you're smiling when you're talking about milk?
I love milk. I
That's
love
really
milk.
perverse.
I love plain milky yogurt. I love all these things.
You're waiting for some intern to send the drink down the bar?
I am not.
Okay, fine.
As someone who spent half my life living with lactose intolerance, says a texter, that magically went away after I had my son, there's nothing I love more than a small glass of full-fat milk with breakfast. Lactate was a good substitute, but it was sweet. By the way, lactate-free milk lactose-free milk tastes as good as regular milk.
That's great to
A little
hear.
bit of sweetness.
I wouldn't know the
Well, if you're
difference.
lactose intolerant, you
Yeah.
can still get your milk at the store, and it tastes almost exactly the
That's
same
great to hear.
as regular milk.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
877-301-8970 is the number to call or text about your milk habits. Quick break. We'll be right back. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
If you listen to Boston Public Radio 3 hours a day, that's 15 hours a week, 60 hours a month, and 720 hours a year. Maybe it's time you pitched in. Call 888-897-9424 or give online at gbhnews.org.
You know, that's a good point.
What
If
is?
you've been listening for a long time, maybe it's time to pitch in. Mitt Romney used to call people that wouldn't get health insurance. Remember that before he
Came out against his own plan, yes.
Yeah, but he was the guy that gave us health insurance here in Massachusetts
He
way
did.
back when. But when he said,
With the help of who? John Gruber.
That's right.
Yes,
John
go ahead.
Gruber, that's right.
Go ahead.
Who's our frequent guest he's the head of the economics
Yep.
department at MIT.
Mhm.
But in any case, he said, Romney said that people that didn't get insurance, then they just went to the emergency room, where everybody has to pay for the emergency room. They were free riders on those who were paying their premiums.
Wow.
So
tough
I don't
talk.
want to call anybody a free rider,
just
but
did.
we are free. We are free. We're not like Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu or any of those things. We are free, and we are commercial free as well, which means we have to get revenue from someplace, and most of it, more than 70%, comes from the generosity of people like you who are not free riders.
So what are you
who
suggesting?
donating. Well, I'm suggesting that if you've been listening to us or the station or PBS for a long time, we need the donations to keep this operation going 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So if you've been hesitating, this is a good day to donate, especially if you want to learn a foreign language. You get the Babbel gift for $10 a month. But if you've been hesitating, we only do these pledge drives a few times a year. I think tomorrow's the last day.
It is.
And the Babbel is done at 7 o'clock tonight, right?
Sad.
So if you've been waiting, stop waiting. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
So for $10 a month or $120 all at once, you can either get the 12-month subscription to Babbel, or Marjorie will deliver a gallon of milk every day to
That's
your
right.
house. Either one is available at 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. I mean, by the way, if you're sitting
what's
there
great?
listening, what?
Oh, never mind. I'll wait till we get
If
back
you're
to the milk.
sitting there listening, and were you about to start talking about milk?
Yeah,
again?
I'll wait till we get
fine.
back.
You're sitting there listening to the show, and you're just nodding. Oh, I sort of like the show. I really like Marjorie. Jim's not so horrible. And you say to yourself, don't you say, I've never made a contribution? And other people are supporting the work that they and their colleagues do. The natural extension of that is for you to try to give what you can. And all you have to do right now is dial 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. And as we say, if you have time, in addition to making a generous contribution, if you can write a little note to us or our colleagues, to the station, it really lifts the spirits of a lot of people who are working really hard. So please do it. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org. Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are live at the library stream at youtube.com/GBHnews. We're talking about your relationship with milk. Apparently, more Americans, particularly young men, for reasons I don't quite understand, have a stronger connection to milk than they have in the past. And you can tell us about that either texting or calling at 877-301-8970. What were you going to say?
What I was going to say is one of the great things is if you know the glass bottles of milk and the cream is at the top.
Yeah.
So you get home and you either drink the cream off the top, put it in your coffee, or you shake it all up and you have the cream in the milk.
They still do that?
Yes, they do. There's still local dairies, a lot of dairies. But anyway, there's a lot of different kinds of milk now. As you know, there's soy milk, there's oat milk, there's all these things. And this was caused consternation for the great comedian Louis Black, who had
this is pretty good. He was with us a few months ago.
Yeah, he was great. A stand-up clip from him ranting about all these different kinds of milk, the so-called milk industrial complex.
When I was a kid, you knew milk was good because there was only one kind of milk, moo cow milk, and that was it. Now you don't know because the milk aisle goes on for ever. There's 1%, 2%, low-fat, skim, acidophilus milk. What the are you talking about? Lactose intolerant milk. If you're lactose intolerant, you can't drink milk. So what's in the cart?
Excellent question. 877-301-8970. And by the way,
lactose.
The soon-to-be
That's what's in the carton.
The soon-to-be head of Health and Human Services, in all likelihood, drinks raw milk, urges people to drink raw milk. And if you read any serious story about this, you realize the likelihood of birds or cows, transmitting bird flu to a human being increases dramatically if you drink what Robert F. Kennedy Jr. wants you to drink. So let's all vote for him tomorrow. Sheila in Worcester, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry. I'm picking up my daughter from school, so there's a lot of background.
It's okay. It's great. Go ahead. Pick her up.
I love you both.
Thanks.
First time calling, and I'm so sorry. I always agree with Marjorie, but this time I'm with Jim.
Thank you.
It's okay.
I hated milk. When I was a child, I used to hold the glass of milk, hold my nose, have a piece of bread in my hand, swallow it all at one gulp, stuff the bread into my mouth. And when we went to the pediatrician, my mother asked the doctor if I had to drink milk, and he said, man is the only animal that continues to drink milk after they're weaned. So I didn't have to drink it after that, and I haven't since.
By the way, I love the way you said you hate milk. You said it with such emotion. Go get your kid, Sheila. We're really glad you called. And keep hating it. I'm with you. Thanks so much for your
Listen
call.
to
Appreciate
this.
it.
This is Teresa from Bellrica. My husband and I often go to a local bar to get drinks and appetizers while we wait for our daughter at gymnastics or dance class. I frequently order a full glass of milk to accompany our apps while he gets his beer. Milk is the most thirst-quenching of all drinks. I have felt this way since I was 8 years old. I'm now 45.
Can I explain something to you, which I should have explained 20 minutes ago? You know what I think turned me off to milk like 100 years ago? Would you agree, even if you love milk like you do, when you have a glass of milk and you take a big gulp, and it's sort of gone by, and you forgot to smell it before you drink
that's
it.
disgusting.
Doesn't that essentially like turn you off to the thing for ages?
You're not supposed to drink sour milk, Jim. You're
Well,
supposed
I
to
know,
make
but
sure.
what if you haven't smelled it?
Well, I think you should. If it's been in the refrigerator for a while, it'd be wise to make sure it's not. But
has that ever happened to you? Yes or no?
I'm sure it's happened to me.
Oh well, thank you.
I'm sure it's happened to me.
Thank you for saying that.
Anyway,
what are you talking about?
Never mind. I lost the text I was going to read. Oh, people are talking about having milk like Mary Ellen and Rentham, cold glass of milk with Ovaltine, or other people are talking about hot chocolate with milk. You know, you put hot chocolate with milk, and also with cookies.
Listen to this guy.
Dipping their Oreos in milk.
Charlie in the car is with Marjorie. Explain what you do, Charlie. Sickening. Go ahead.
Hi.
Yeah, well, right now I'm headed to Maine in a ski trip. Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Hi, Charlie. And
I love your show.
Thank you.
I'm a long-time listener.
Yeah.
Long-time contributor.
Yeah, thank you.
But I've never called in before.
Well, here you are. What's with you and milk there, Charlie?
6 years old. Started drinking milk. I have never stopped. 70 years old now. It is my favorite drink, and that peanut butter and jelly thing was the best.
Listen how happy Charlie is. Hey, Charlie,
It's great.
thanks for listening, your donation.
It's great.
Enjoy the ski trip, whatever. He told whoever answered the phone for us, a gallon of milk a week. Nauseating. How much do you think you drink? Gallon a week?
Well,
Gallon a
I
week?
have a lot of yogurt, too, as you may have noticed. I have my smoothies, which you
I know,
agreed
they're
were
very
absolutely
good.
delicious.
But what happens if you drink it and it's curdled? And doesn't that turn you off like for
curdled,
weeks?
Jim.
No, I know you don't do
Yeah.
it intentionally.
No, I mean, you're on my back to get milk
What
every
if you
morning
drink it and
when
there's a
Robert-
worm in it? How about that? Do you ever? That's what happened to Robert Kennedy.
That's what happened to Robert
The worm
Kennedy.
went right up
I don't
there.
think it was the milk that gave him the worm.
What was it?
We don't know. We don't know. Where is that worm, by the way? Is the worm still there? It's dead. But is it...
I believe he transmitted it to Tulsi Gabbard, from what I understand.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Back
We
in
are
break.
done
That's
for
it.
today.
We're done.
Thank you very much for listening to us. We're going to be back here tomorrow with Mayor Michelle Wu. She's going to be with us from 11 to noon for another edition of Ask the Mayor. Okay, I'm on the wrong page. Turn the page, Marjorie. We are done.
We are done. That is
Okay.
correct. This is going
Tomorrow,
well.
in addition to Mayor Wu,
Who are
we're
we
going to be
and
joined
why
by
are we
national
here?
security expert Juliette Kayyem. Can't wait to talk to her. Former White House COVID czar Ashish Jha.
Oh, great.
Yeah, perfect day because there's all this funding that could be missing from.
He's now head of the School of Public Health at Brown,
Yes,
by the way. Yeah.
and on cancer research.
That's great.
And
Great.
Cy Montgomery will be with us,
Whoa.
too. I want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Ed Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our additional support from Tamsin Vidal, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. We want to thank our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Patrick Lally, Juan Jose Cadena, Olivia Corcio, and thanks to our hosts at the Newsfeed Cafe and across the street at the Lennox Hotel, The Culture Show with Jared Bowen. We didn't get to talk to Jared about what he's
Where
going
the
on.
hell is he?
So you could be surprised when you tune in a little bit
Okay,
after the
fine.
we're done is when Jared Bowen is going to
We are
start
done.
immediately after us in 89.7 GBH. I hope if you haven't contributed, you have time to do it. We only got one more day for this pledge drive, and we're counting on you. I'm
are.
Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browdy.
Thanks again for tuning in. Hope you can tune in again tomorrow for the mayor, and have a great afternoon.
It's the next to last day of our winter membership drive. Giving now will not only help pay for Boston Public Radio listening in the next months ahead, but it will also help keep us on track to end the drive tomorrow. Please give online at gbhnews.org or call 888-897-9424. All gifts are welcome. I'm Melissa Jones, and I'm joined by my wonderful friend and colleague, Mark Cohn.
And here we are wrapping up the hour with Jim and Marjorie, looking for 16 contributions to ensure that we continue to go strongly through these final hours of this next to last day of our winter membership drive. Thank you if you've already made your contribution. If you haven't yet done so, support Jim and Marjorie, Boston Public Radio, with your call of support right now. The giving is so easy to do online at gbhnews.org or by calling us at 888-897-9424.
If you're like me, you've actually talked back to the radio as though Jim and Marjorie were right there in the room with you. Then it's time to give if you're doing that, especially when you're certain that you're right and they are wrong. It happens, doesn't it? We're not going to tell them, though. Please support your BPR listening by making a contribution right now, and then carry on with keeping Jim and Marjorie in line. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And with your ongoing gift of $10 a month on our Sustainer plan, we'll say thank you with the online learning app Babbel. This is a 1-year ad-free subscription to a wonderful gift to yourself if you're looking to learn a new language, or a gift for someone you know, maybe someone who's traveling later in the year, or just wants to learn a new language themselves. The lessons are really easy. They're broken down into bite-sized chunks, about 10 or 15 minutes each, and in no time you'll be speaking like a native. You won't believe it. Such a value at $10 a month to support Jim and Marjorie and GBH with your call right now. 888-897-9424 or go online, gbhnews.org.
To stay on track for this next to last day of the drive, we're looking for 12 people to give in the next 6 minutes. GBH and NPR play a vital role in delivering trustworthy news that you rely on. When you give now, you help ensure that quality journalism prevails over fake news. Please make your contribution now and be one of those 12 people in the next 6 minutes to get us to our goal. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
I'm encouraging you to sign up as a sustaining member to GBH, and that's whether you're new to the station or you've been an annual member for years. It's really the best way to financially support the NPR and GBH news that you trust. Really easy to set up with your bank account or your credit card. We just need a little contact information and that monthly amount that fits your budget. I got to stress that. And it's that simple. So just take a couple of minutes right now to enroll. We promise it'll be painless. 888-897-9424, online at gbhnews.org.
When you make that sustaining gift of $10 a month right now, you can choose to receive a 1-year ad-free subscription to that language learning app, Babbel. It's so wonderful. It's got 14 different languages in there. You can learn 1, 4, 14, whatever you're interested in doing during the time of your subscription. You can also give $120 all at once to have access to Babbel right now. But most importantly, this offer goes away at 7 o'clock tonight. So there's not much time, but you know what? You're listening now, so let's give now. Online at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
I want to send a couple of thanks out to Susan in Andover. Thank you so much for your support. Also have a friend in Lexington, Anne in Yarmouthport, loves Jim and Marjorie, and thank you so much. And also Suzanne in Arlington, a generous gift from you, Suzanne. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate it. We're hoping you will do what Suzanne and our friend in Lexington and Susan in Andover have done. Make your show of support right now. Help us lower that goal. We're down now to 9 contributions left in these final 4 minutes of the hour. Again, the giving is easy. Give only what your budget allows at 888-897-9424, online at gbhnews.org.
The membership drive is almost over. It ends tomorrow, and you've probably been meaning to make your contribution. You just haven't gotten around to it. Well, time is running out to get it done during this drive. It just takes a couple of minutes to give, and when you do, you're going to feel great about doing your part to keep GBH on the radio in Boston. Don't take my word for it, though. Why don't you find out how great it feels for yourself by giving now at gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
All right, just a reminder, we have the online learning app Babbel. It's yours for an ongoing gift of $10 a month as a sustainer. 12 months ad-free Babbel. You got 14 languages. This really is your last chance to support Jim and Marjorie, Boston Public Radio, and pick up the Babbel Learning app. You won't regret it. Really a great gift you can give yourself, all while supporting us here at 89.7. We so much ask for your support. It's a community effort. Please do your part right now, online at gbhnews.org or by calling 888-897-9424.
The goal right now is just 6 more people in the next couple of minutes. In an era filled with misleading information, GBH remains that trusted voice you depend on. And when you give now, you help us continue our mission of providing accurate and factual news. Please find the amount that is just right for you and then make that gift right now. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
And we promise to make the giving really easy to do. Just takes a couple of minutes of your time. We need your name, some contact information, the amount you'd like to give, and how you'd like to pay. 888-897-9424, gbhnews.org.
One quick more thank you to Corrine in Greenland, New Hampshire, who says, I appreciate the fact-based reporting and all of the interesting and wonderful guests. Thank you, Corrine. Your contribution makes that happen. Join with Corrine and all the other fans listening right now with your gift of support. gbhnews.org or 888-897-9424.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Brown University Pre-College Programs, where high school students can prepare for college learning, experience college life, and make new friends. Over 300 course offerings available. precollege.brown.edu. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked #1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the 2nd consecutive year. Details